Good viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
How's it going? I was just trying to figure out whether to perceive the universe in green and red or in blue, and which was going to be more beneficial to my.
Do you have the official chromotherapy manual to know which?
No, it's I joined the Illuminatomy.
Illuminatomy. Okay.
And apparently they're like 3D drawings that you look at through. Yeah.
That's cool. It seems like the red and blue are too far apart. Can you see between both red and blue? Like you kind of have to. You can't do both at once like the 3D glasses. You have to use it as a filter.
Yeah, I guess it helps you see whether it's the layer of fascia, the layer of bones, or the layer of connective tissue. I think that's the idea.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Or muscles, I should say, because the fascia is the connective.
I like that. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so welcome to Andreas Xirtus Book Club. You'll find links in below, and instead of selling camera equipment and lights, Andreas gets 15 cents for every book he sells. No, I'm just kidding.
That'd be sweet. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a good way to go bankrupt though. Trying to sell books.
So this book is a long one that I don't know that I'll ever read, but apparently it was written in the 60s, and it prophesied that the very first black president was going to be named Obama, O-B-O-M-I.
Really?
So, yeah. Stand on Zanzibar by John Brunner.
How old is this book?
He was born in 34, and I think the book was written in 61. I haven't found the exact page. I bet you, if you could find the page reference, I could actually crack the book to. But as far as unheralded,
what's the book called?
This is almost a think tank.
Zanzibar.
Yes. Stand on Zanzibar.
Black president, African American, Afram Obami.
O-B-O-M-I, I believe. Yeah.
His Afram heritage, which is African American, which is what they call it in the future. Afram.
Interesting.
Whoa. Interesting.
Apparently, there's some scientific. No, whoa, the word is escaping me. There used to be something that used to mean sci-fi, but I'm sounding like a degenerate trying to pronounce it off of the back of my mind's eye, if that was a thing. And then we have cryptoschatology, which I don't think is the study of strange poos. This is apparently cryptoeschatology, as in hidden history and knowledge. It's like the science of conspiracy theories, essentially. It's another book I have not yet cracked the cover of, but I'm interested to see tracing the hermetic roots of Freemasonry. So seems like a legit academic tome.
I apologize in advance
for so stupendous. In every way, he's just tremendous. With a smile that's contagious and a heart so vivacious, Andreas Xirtus, oh, he's audacious. Seats sing with the birds and
He's audacious.
trees.
I do like that. It's true. I am audacious.
Hear wherever he breathes. His laughter echoed through the streets.
It's got that Pasadena Playhouse thing. Yeah.
Pasadena playoffs. What is that a reference to?
Oh, dude, there's all different kinds of theater out there. I know not everybody's a theater geek, but there's like Edinburgh, which is like the good old Scottish theater. There's like Ayurvedic theater, like ancient Hindu theater. There's like the Indonesian mask theater, but like there's also Broadway. There's the Chicago Playhouse.
Sure.
There's all different styles. There's improv theaters. There's the
You
Toronto
called it playhouse, not playoffs.
Yeah, the Playhouse. Oh, because you're
my
sporty.
NBA brain right
That's
now.
why.
And I thought you said the Pasadena playoffs and
No.
the playoffs. The playoffs.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. No, the Playhouse is like, so Pasadena Playhouse is like a very California style because it's Pasadena, LA. And so the LA musical scene is, like there's people that go from the Midwest to California to become movie stars, and then they don't, and then they end up becoming like musical theater people.
Sure.
But then there are people that were always musical theater people, and they know like you should probably just go to like Chicago, like Minnesota has a really good Minneapolis Playhouse. Is really important.
A lot of people get by
Styles.
performing, as they say. They just have.
But there's like
There-
scenes. I don't know. Scenes are interesting because there's different kinds of people and places that change theater. So theater can be really unique to a location, right? So if you go see a play in Minnesota, it's going to affect the way it is versus if it's like in the Pacific Northwest or
Sure.
if it's in Scotland, So, and the music style, if you're writing music, like the style of music that's written in Pasadena is more.
Have you ever been to the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Yeah.
A lot. And
Not
so
a lot.
there's people acting it out in front or like calling out the
Yeah.
jokes in advance. And
Never go until you've seen the movie. Be careful.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, it's gonna
It's surreal.
confuse the issue. And apparently, Rocky Horror Picture Show was done by the same. I don't know. It was something a lot earlier in his career. There was some weird synchronicity there, but Shakespearean theater used to part of it. A large part of it was the audience yelling things back at the people on stage, and they would have to make time for it. I'm sure region to region, depending on where you went, they would have different types of callbacks or things to yell at the confronting truth.
Yeah, it's weird to me that like
truth.
theater isn't more merged with film because people do film plays, but it seems crazy to me like people put so much work into a play that's like a mandala of sand because then it's over. You do like 3 runs of it, 3 weeks of runs of it. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, why wouldn't you want to record?
No, it's a lifestyle, and there are stage actors who, like Martin Short, especially. He's such an energetic person that you can capture his energy on screen. And he can even distill it down into writing, into characters that he creates and bits that he creates. But the true embodiment of Martin Short as a human being is this vivacious, lively, larger-than-life stage actor who is able, part of the respect that you give to these people is not that they're able to pull off the performance once. And it's not just a rapper who who records 4 bars at a time and then stitches together the best take and then can never really perform it live or something. It's that he memorizes the entire script or his entire part, and there's perhaps some of that is lost in the late night 7-minute to 15-minute interview things that are out there. The other thing, so cognitive yoga, I'm thinking mental gymnastics. What would the mental gymnastics look like? It would be like crazy instead of like Tough Mudder or Spartan Race. What would it look like if you were like forcing people to do mental gymnastics? I don't know.
I think there's a lot of examples of that. I think the non-Euclidean geometry that people are experiencing in first-person VR systems are kind of an example of that. But mental gymnastics are to create synapses and to change the way you perceive something, how you're measuring something.
You force a Democrat to take the Republican side and the Republican to take you force a never Trumper to somehow defend Trump.
Yeah. Sophism is an early, sophist debate is, I wouldn't say exactly early, but it's a pretty early form of mental gymnastics. But there's tons of mental gymnastics you can perform. Like you can imagine like what happens if you age backwards. Just imagining things is a big one, but also math is mental gymnastics. Was that?
Yes. No, that's a type of rudimentary. It's like if you're trying to get the basics down in terms of turning over concepts in your mind, the associative property, the correlations, and geometric proofs. And we have individuotopia.
Is it a nightmare?
It's my first language, I swear.
I'm getting there.
And Josh Sheldon seems to have written a lot of seminal books over the time and is a very, I've heard the name.
What's it about?
Let's see. The year is 2084, and that famous Margaret Thatcher quote has become a reality. There is no such thing as society. No one speaks to anyone else. No one looks at anyone else. People do not collaborate. They only compete. I hate to admit it, but this has tragic consequences. Unable to satisfy their social urges, the population has fallen into a pit of depression and anxiety. Suicide has become the norm. It all sounds rather morbid, does it not? But please do not despair. There is hope, and it comes in the form of our hero, even though there's no space between the word of and are, even though this is okay. Anyways, Renee on Blanca, who is, I imagine, the protagonist of the story, wishing to fill this. There's only 2 more sentences. Wishing to fill the society-shaped hole in her life. Ouch. Our Renee does the unthinkable. She goes in search of human company. It's a radical, again, no space between it's and a. It's a radical act and an enormous challenge, but that, I suppose, is why her tale's worth recounting.
I mean, you got to imagine, though, in 20 years, you got all these kids who they're okay. I always think one of the big problems with boomers is when they were kids, their parents said, go to your room, right? And in their room, they had like their radios and their TVs and things like that, or whatever. But it became like, go to your place, go to yourself, go to your own.
As a punishment, though.
Yeah, but the punishment was really like, if something's wrong, like right and wrong is such a weird thing too. I don't mean to sound like that.
For me, I have an older brother and
here.
younger sister, and it was like we were literally physically fighting, and we would slam the doors and end up with stitches on our fingers because it's like, you know, going to your room was a way to just minimize the
exactly. So like, let's say that somebody let's say something's going on and you're wrongfully blamed as a child because you're your older sibling or something like that. Like, it's all kinds of circumstances where like, you just go to your room. So you go to your room and you get to calm down. So it becomes this enforced boomerism that yourself, your individual place. It's one of the reasons why traffic jams are so bad, because they're like subconsciously into being alone in a space as long as possible. Because in that car, they can like comb their hair.
Oh yeah, I mean, my car is my universe to some extent. Yeah, for
Dude,
sure.
You're in my car. I feel safest of all. Those are boomers. That's like a boomer thing. There's a boomer.
I mean, it's the beginning of Office Space where he doesn't realize that he's mouthing the words and using the N-word.
Meanwhile, you have a reaction to that. Like you have like the sandwich generation, the Pepsi generation. You have this thing where like you got Vietnam, and you have people that are living and dreaming the same dream, sleeping in the same, like hippies and everything, even this idea. But really, there's always been a place where everyone can get together. They can all share the same dream. It's like the Marines, right? You go to a boot camp program. Of course, you have Burning Man collectives and things like that, which are, I would say, kind of furthering my point that it's like a military thing. But you build this culture around either being alone and afraid and more comfortable, like as an individual, or around being part of the group, being part of each other. Hey, what's up?
Yeah, how's it going?
I saw you earlier, and then you were off and you were on again. And that was cool.
Yeah, I was like, well, you said you had 10 minutes, so I took a shower.
That's great. Yeah,
I'm trying to get a job as Aiden's body double at some point, so I might have to shave or something. But it's like it's pretty close, right? We're
it's getting there.
Are you between 5'10" and 6'2"? Is that no?
Yeah. Well, I'm on the upper end of 6'2", so.
Oh, there you go.
Or
no wonder, yeah, you didn't look small next to Alex on camera, huh? Yeah, nice. You dwarf me.
That's my dating, height of. I say I'm 6'2".
Short people got no reason.
Dude, Aiden, it's a shame that you only appear like Shakespeare from the bust up, because your sense of style is again beyond reproach, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Well, we were just looking at a book called Individutopia and discussing how the title in and of itself is kind of an oxymoron, because there's no such thing as a utopic version where everyone's individuated.
Except for boomers.
Boomers,
because boomers like being alone because of the whole go to your room thing. And so there's a whole idea that it's like, I feel my comfort zone is really like go to your room. I think that for some people that's right. However, there's also the antithesis of that culture too, which is like sleeping on a trampoline together.
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of weird. Like boomers, like their whole thing of like, oh, I got when their parents moved to their second house, it had like enough, it had enough rooms for all of them.
Yeah. And like it's like the plague period, the enclosure movement, like where all of a sudden there was less people, more spaces to live, and so people were spread out further. And that's different than
But
the
then again,
people that were
they
living
also
in one room, you know?
That's more than any other generation.
So those aren't coasters, those aren't stamps, and they're not bottle caps. What's on the wall behind you?
Oh,
Is it
art.
just circles? Oh, it's just art. Okay, I
Yeah,
was hoping
it's
that it was a
necessary
collection
to
of something.
trees.
It simulates visually a collection of something rather well. I like that though. It's a good backdrop.
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, Andreas, I did not show you the new photos that I've been working with.
Oh, do you have? Can you share screen
You
or
could
do you have a
show
link?
like the one I sent you. I think that's okay. I
Do
never.
you have a link or like do you want to share your screen?
You can you do that? Like I think I sent you one.
Where do I go to your Instagram?
No, I just like my messages to you. I sent you one.
In Instagram or where which messages?
Instagram.
Okay, 1 second.
It's interesting watching myself smoking. The only other time it's like when do you have a mirror in front of you when you're smoking? But I guess on the can, I have this in one of the bathrooms.
All I see is
Used to
John
have it.
Oliver's worst nightmare. Is
All
that
right,
legal?
wait. I'll show you. I'll get it. Oh wait.
Shit. So great. Such a great word.
Ones that don't reveal. I'm like looking the ones that do not.
Just before you share on the theme of musicals, and I have no idea if my voice is clipping over the music or not.
So audacious, bro. No,
Was
you're
it
good.
the Rockefeller musical that you pointed me to?
Rothschild's musical?
Rothschild. Oh,
One of my
thank you.
favorite musicals. I didn't make
Top
that
notch.
one, obviously.
Top notch.
I didn't make the
Dude, I know the chick on the right. No, I'm just kidding. That's Gwyneth Paltrow, isn't it?
Who doesn't love Palladian Grays? Right? That's all.
Yeah.
So is this what you're working on here? Aiden.
Yeah.
Is this like a would you rather game? Are we playing like right side, left side, or like?
I think both of them are gonna get you. This is very X-Files. Both of them are gonna get you moment. You know.
And is that just bad posture in her lower back, or is she actually pregnant?
Wait. I'm sending you a few.
Let me pop back here.
I like wearing glasses indoors, though. It's a new time. If people are allowed to wear masks, then I can cover my eyes, right?
Whoa.
I mean, Aiden knows
right,
this
I think
with
it's
blue
a
eyes
deal.
at 6'2". He knows that sometimes you have to like hide the eyes, otherwise it's too hypnotic.
So what is this for? What is this project about?
Oh, it is for the Wait, I'm trying to get to my that is for the a UFO documentary I'm doing.
Oh, sweet.
So like I'm just like keeping the names down, but that would be the weird like 1960s vibes, but
See, I can't tell if UFO is code for UAP, which is underage attracted person, and then it's all like some like subliminal double meaning stuff that I'm just like on the outside of or something.
Yeah, that would
I'm
make a lot of
looking
sense.
in, or
Odds
and if you
and-
guys are all just like secret intelligence officials that are gathering information, and I mean I'm along for the ride either way. You know?
Yeah, when I was like, if it becomes a movie, it's because it's going to be those type of pics, like those video pics of just like strange women dressed up like as nuns with cashmere sweaters.
They're only strange if you live above ground. Down below, that's what they all look like, you know.
Yeah, I know. But like just like thinking of that, like having eyes wide shut music of a bunch of crazy and like hyper anxiety driven people dressed up as nuns, but with like cashmere sweaters and designer purses, going into a casino.
Aiden, have you heard of Duncan Trussell as a podcaster, artist, comedian?
I need to now. Why?
Duncan, well, he's 15 years ago he was posting on YouTube just like a 10-minute video of static with like visual images being like The chair is against the wall. Agent number 19 from Singapore, you are now activated. And just like putting stuff out there that is like a nightmare for most intelligence officials because they can't tell if it's misinformation or disinformation or if it's actually a way to communicate with a distributed force of people in a non-direct way. But now his most recent podcast, I was telling Andreas, he was kind of joking that he's doing video podcasts to push the envelope because not many people are doing it. But then he opened it with a music video that was clearly AI, and he doesn't really let on that it's just a bunch of procedurally generated material, but it by a band called Seven Nuns, and the song was called like Dead Mall, and it's like Dead Mall, children used to run through here, and but yeah, specifically you brought up nuns, and so somehow he was able to use Seven Nuns as the artifice or the platform on which to.
Oh my God, have you guys seen
the
Udio?
What is it?
I have not seen. Well, okay, it would be the software that he is using to make AI video music.
Okay.
Udio, they are very crazy in that in their beta, they're just letting everyone have like produce 6 minutes of songs every day for like eternity. Like, and it's really funny is that it's a pretty good one. They got a good Paul Muad'Dib song. If you look up it online of a Paul Muad'Dib show tune.
As far as upselling podcasts or something from a production end, outside of intros and outros and little animated, procedurally generated or otherwise CGI clips, having music that they can play in the background and like licensing it to people. And so what you're talking about is, I
mean, it's like
relying on the program not to trip up YouTube's censors or whatever that try to say. Oh,
they have a very powerful in-house network though that is very good at detecting songs, and I think a lot of it comes from every time you put music or any type of clip on YouTube, they have some unheard, signature that isn't in the MP4 and in the in the MP4 and in the MP3 file of the YouTube that allows them to know where did you get that music from if it's from them. And then I think there is a more base, like more novel or more not as well fitted neural network that kind of details,
like Shazam almost.
Yeah, like
where it's listening for something that it knows.
Is this just a pirated version of Rick and Morty?
Andreas at one time was messing with YouTube, and again, it's a shame. And it's a travesty on YouTube's part that they haven't already hired both you and Andreas, because Andreas was taking where he was able to layer in naked women dancing in the 60s and some psychedelic thing because it was tricking the YouTube algorithm because there were 3 images layered over one, and he was only using the yellows or the greens or the blues or the reds from one thing. And
that would be a cool.
And it's a video that should get flagged. And when you send an email to YouTube, say, look, here's a video, an example of something that I was able to sneak through your algorithm. Now, you could try to say that I'm a bad actor.
No, that's a good acting. That's good acting.
Thank you.
But here's also something.
He knows how to pack.
1960s, showgirls.
House of Jehovah, we got to give a little shout out.
They show their boobs.
I love you,
like,
Jehovah.
when you're allowed to show that. If it's like artistry, or if it's like ball, you're allowed to show your boobs. It just can't be the.
Oh, and now there's waxing.
Yeah, there's
videos. If you want to learn how to wax your own asshole, no. Literally, there are videos on YouTube.
There's gynecology exams on YouTube. It's crazy. I don't know what the rules are. I just don't care. It's just like
in some countries, the porn websites trigger a different kind of firewall, so people.
I think the idea though is like it's supposed to be sorted. Like there's things like obviously there's some sick weirdo. He wants to look at something that content's on YouTube. Everything's on YouTube, but they just don't want it like while you're trying to watch your family show that all of a sudden it's like one of those things like is tied to it or trend. Like I think that's a big.
I think the big thing is like not making it actually Pornhub.
Yeah, they got that already. I mean, that's Kanye's new thing.
Well, they let reaction videos back. Yeah, so we have
Bernoulli's
fallacy, which was an interesting. So it's statistical illogic and the crisis of modern science. And so what this is Bernoulli is known for his mathematical description of fluid mechanics.
Rad Dad, glad you got that. I'm glad for Rad Dad.
Pressure times rho times gravity times height.
Okay. And so like the famous demonstration that I saw, I remember in my 9th grade physics textbook that I took home over the summer to read.
Bro, what if Kundalini Yoga is worshiping Jehovah? Ekam Kar, bro.
There you go.
I don't know. Could be
Internal, our own Umi.
right if you're doing it right.
But so in 9th grade, I was dissatisfied with the job my physics teacher did. He was also my basketball coach, and maybe that had something to do with my.
Why were you learning physics in 9th grade? That doesn't make any sense. You have to have at least like algebra 2 to know that.
I took algebra 2.
It wasn't. We weren't differentiated into tracks at that point. The next year, you could either take chemistry or biology, and if you took chemistry, it's because you had a stronger math background the grade before.
I went in Spring Hill. We took
physics again senior year though as an AP physics.
We took physics, and like first off, at Spring Hill School where I went in 5th grade, we had algebra 2 was the 5th grade math that we did, and then it was pre-calculus that was like 6th grade. But we also had physics all through school, like since kindergarten. Because
wow, so you actually like went to a like actual tech school where they were like very forcibly. Was this like a?
I also went to like pretty much a different school every other year.
School. Okay, I was in one of the top tier public school systems. That's they a large percentage of the graduates.
We had to do physics from like kindergarten on, like building a lever. A plank lever, one of those things that you can lift with that's at a higher, like give me a plank that is long enough and I can,
as Archimedes said, yes.
Yeah, like this is all, and then you had
Aristotle.
Flipping, we'd like make a little marble that can have enough inertia that it can go in a loop, the simple physics in like early on in school.
Oh yeah, we did that type of stuff.
Yeah.
For me, it was like they explain that when something's in orbit, it's perpetually falling. And it's like, okay, I can say that out loud, but I like took it home. And again, over the summer, I think I was on some retreat with friends and literally brought the textbook as like one of the few items and was just sitting there at night, just staring at the page until my brain understood what it meant for something to be moving at 11,000 miles an hour at a certain height above the ground. And with my understanding of projectile motion and mathematics, and, it doesn't really include dimensional analysis when it comes to, calculating how many moles or chemical reactions, but so Bernoulli's fallacy, the example in textbooks is that there's like usually it's an elephant and he's blowing between 2 ping pong balls that are suspended by a string, and the question is what happens when the elephant blows between the balls, and your mind's the intuitive thing is that they're going to separate because you're pushing air between them, but in reality what happens when you do that, even like with a straw and you blow between 2 ping pong balls, is they move in and they touch each other. And so somehow the effect, so Bernoulli, and the shape of a bird's wing or a plane's wing, and the effect of creating lift through, through that counters the projectile motion forces of gravity accelerating you downward. So Bernoulli was out there, as a established mathematical kind of impartial source of information, but then there was an issue about vaccination around either smallpox or it was the first round of malaria or something, and somehow his name was used in scientific journals, and his opinion was, you people are stupid, we're the smart ones, let us tell you what to do, and we're the scientists and we're the doctors and we're telling you that the injection's safe, so fucking take it. And who knows whether Bernoulli was, pardon my French, on a Sunday, or no, actually it's Saturday cast.
I think Bernoulli is Italian, right?
Perhaps. Yeah. And I don't know whether he himself in his individual life, or even whether anyone he's been on record endorsing vaccines, but in the public's eye, his position of authority, there's the
Swiss. I'm sorry. Still, he was Italian Swiss. So he's like a Vatican,
so this
Jesuit trained.
It says Bernoulli's folly explains why something has gone wrong with how we use data and how to fix it.
No. Okay, born in the Netherlands into a family of distinguished mathematicians at the time of Spanish Netherlands protests, moved to Italian Spain, went to University of Paris. Seems based. That's the thing. Everybody hates on like these scientist dudes, but like you'd imagine like it's a great life. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was weird back in the day that a lot of these big royal families that were into physics, they would sometimes be they weren't very inclusive about like when they shared their information, but so there'll be like things of their parent may have discovered everything, but they'll milk it out so that the kids get some credit like down the line. There was a lot of that. Like
Andreas, can I ask you to Google the court case People versus Collins, 1968? So I just opened to a random page. This looks like it's chapter 2 of Bernoulli's fallacy. It's called the titular fallacy, Titular. I'm not speaking bad words here. So no, the quote by Justice Raymond L. Sullivan in the majority opinion in People versus Collins, 1960, and I'm not sure what this is, but it says mathematics, a veritable sorcerer in our computerized society, all the way back to 1968, while assisting the trier, Trier, of fact in the search for truth, must not cast a spell over him. And we are still today at the crux of, you have the head of NASA explaining to Congress why it needs funding for the moon, and he talks about we need to send a probe to the backside of the moon. It's dark there all the time. Anyone see a problem? No, because there is no dark side of the moon. Get it?
Oh yeah,
And so the people authorizing the funding for whether or not we're going to send a probe to the backside of the moon, it's dark in the sense that no one really knows what's there. But it's first of all, the head of NASA was recently on record. Alex Jones did like a 5-minute expose, just like dumping hubris on this guy, or exposing him for. It's one thing for someone like any three of us in casual conversation to misstate something like, oh, the backside of the moon. Yeah, the dark side of the moon, where it's never light there.
Mm-hmm. They refer to it as the far side of the moon.
Like fifth graders, when they learn about this, understand this correctly. When fifth graders are like into space, they can explain to you that there's no dark side of the moon. So what is the head of NASA?
Theoretically, though, there's only one side of the moon that we see, which is the near side, because it's the side that's nearest to us. And there's another side of the moon that doesn't orbit in front of us, because the moon doesn't twist in some sort of a, it's
gravitationally locked.
Yeah, it's not like
the moon could be cone shaped, and extending away from us is a giant cone. And what we see is the end of a rounded end, because that is all we see. In architecture school, the very first exercise is they gave you the outline of a barn far away, and you were supposed to kind of guess as to the three-dimensional aspect of it. And most people played into the paradigm and tried to create a boxy farm, barn type structure out
at
of
night under a full.
I went the other way with it.
Near side of the moon receives an order of 10 lux of illumination more about a city sidewalk under a streetlight gets. This is 34 times more light than is received on Earth under a full moon. Whereas the far side of the moon during a lunar night receives only about 0.001 lux of starlight. Only during a full moon, as viewed from Earth, is the whole far side of the moon dark.
Yeah, it's a perfect place to do a big giant telescope.
Well, and if 1,000 years ago someone went to the moon and then their society died out, they didn't have a newspaper. We didn't find the articles about them. Maybe it was Tartaria or something. That's where they probably would operate from. And as far as an existential thing with humanity and reaching for the stars or aiming for the moon, if the moon looked lush and green, we would be compelled to try to fly up there and live there. But the fact that it looks desolate and like a bunch of a dust-ridden hellscape means that the efforts that humanity organizes to go up into the sky en masse and send all of our best and brightest.
When I did my NASA internship, they were very, very hyper concerned that there was the moon, the lunar regolith was too toxic. Too toxic. Had way too much. If you got any of it in your lungs, you'd get cancer instantly.
Mesothelioma.
I don't know now. Thinking of that, I think that was more of a way to delay more access into the moon, like going back to the moon. I think that was more of them just putting as many.
So what year was that?
What? This is like 2007, 2008.
Because Andreas, I know, I can never tell if people, when they say they worked for NASA, it means never a straight answer, and it means you can't really ask me. I'm not allowed to tell you what I did in the past, so I'll just say I worked for NASA. Or
nervous about it.
Okay. I mean, there's a certain amount of like cultural swag to it, or like credibility that one gains.
Yeah, and I think there is not that much now because it's more of like people are beginning to view NASA as like it's the government. Like we kind of view government as like affirmative action or something like that. So I think that type of thing went away. But they were very big about
I think you're just being kind to the rest of humanity because I think we've reached a somewhat idiocracy type baseline. But proceed, please. Yeah.
they're very big on though, like they got a group email when one of the Apollo astronauts went on a radio show and said, "Yeah, there are aliens." And it was funny is that guy, I forget what his name was, but if you look him up, it was in 2007. They gave a big thing about talking to your interns or whatnot. That this guy's just an old guy, but no, but or they would use the fact that he was doing remote viewing experiments during his free time on the Apollo mission. That they did they tried to do a somewhat controlled. I wouldn't call it a science, but him and one of his buddies who was on Earth at a specific time, they had a thing of let's think about one thing and let's see if I can communicate my answer to you during this hour period when we could do that then.
We're looking at pictures of robotics right now that Andreas is pulling up. Have you seen Boston Dynamics?
These are all kinds of projects they're trying to get interns involved in. They're like, hey, interns can help NASA by etc. Simulating alien worlds. Yeah, well, pretty much.
I mean, like I did see what I also saw there was like, they did do a lunar rover thing that was, at the time, it was pretty big. It was huge. It was for people. I mean, it cost like $5 or $10 million. I don't know what exactly happened to it, but I don't think they expected anything would have ever come from that one.
But and again, speaking of contemporary news items, so Atlas at MIT here. I'm in Boston, so I just like to pump their tires. But Boston Dynamics, they ditched their old Atlas robot and they completely, instead of looking like a guy carrying a backpack, they now have something that is like a contortionist. And if you needed a robot that could crawl through an underground cavern that was where at certain points you're laying on your belly and using your toes to push yourself 2 inches at a time forward, right? This is what you would need a robot like this. And your giant robot that can balance and jump and do all this stuff is pretty much useless to crawl through tunnels, especially if they are narrow caverns where basically only either skinny people or children can fit up and through certain very secret passageways or restricted areas. And
yeah, I don't know about this.
Their real scary robot though has wheels. Have you seen the one that looks like a horse that has lost its back legs? And if you were going to give a horse a wheelchair, it does this thing where it's like basically Spot the robot with its front 2 legs, but it's on. And when they show that thing moving outside, so yeah, Andreas, the name of the other specific MIT.
I don't think on
Boston Dynamics. That one's terrifying.
Those robots, I don't even think they use ML models on them. I think it's classic robotics. And
again, I hope Andreas can find an image of that. Not that it's his job or anything.
I think the ML models would actually go. The inference rate would be too slow on those.
So my weird synchronicity interpretation. The theme song or like the theme call of Woody the Woodpecker.
Yeah.
Right. So if you change that into the sound of a robot, like in Star Wars, there were these things that would like roll in and unfoil and then shoot.
Yeah, the blast.
And like that's the type of crowd control that we hopefully won't see like next January 6th or something. It's like maybe they'll use the deterrent system instead. They'll use the active denial system, and they'll just make people's skin boil.
We're with the microwave radiation that makes everybody's skin go up to 120 degrees.
Yeah. Again, I believe the same way it's like the nuclear bomb had its like public demonstration, and there was a moment where the weapon changes the paradigm of warfare. And when it comes to hand-to-hand on the street, urban warfare, if you show that the most badass motherfuckers who are determined to run down that street Again, they're not getting injured. It's a weapon that's somehow deemed to be humane to use because you're not permanently scarring these individuals. You might cause psychotic breaks because people are forcing themselves up against pain, and it's like a dog running through their shock fence, and they keep getting shocked, you know?
Yeah.
But
I've always had this actual joke idea that I think would have been funny. You know, I think it was Bikini Atoll when they did that nuclear explosion. I think sometimes I have this belief that maybe some aliens or, you know, some ET presence was really there, and they sabotaged it in such a way that the nuclear test was about 10 times more potent than they thought it would be.
Yeah.
I think that was something that may have happened.
Okay.
Like, I don't think we had the cameras to know that back then, but that is something I think could have happened.
So if Andreas is listening, I believe it's called the Handle robot. Or so if you type into YouTube, nightmare-inducing wheeled robot. This is the thing, again, legs and feet are cute, but once you realize how it's like, imagine a robot on a Segway with independently moving wheels, and it can turn tight circles, and it can go over all types of terrain. Right, having to step 1 foot at a time is so energy intensive, and this thing can go 40 miles an hour because it has wheels, bro. You know, it's a little bit. You could eventually run at 40 miles an hour, and then one misstep and you go ass over tea kettle. But with wheels, you know, it's
Hey. Yeah, that's like the thing about some of these like robots is that I think like there will be this problem of the rate of failure rate, which should be about like 1 in a million or something. But I feel like
and Andreas speaks from the background though silently by putting up something probably related to a DuckTales episode, if I know his shtick, or at least I know it's a one-wheeled robot. 2 wheels is cute, and it's because we don't have servos that are hydraulically powered, I guess. Or right, 1 wheel is pretty badass too. If that thing can self-right and self-balance, it's so menacing. Because then, literally, again, if it has weapons, it can spin 360. Right? It's just so dangerous.
Yeah.
And it might think it's targeting and aiming, but it's falling at the same time. And
I mean, but like the thing with a lot of these robots is if you just send electronic noise at them that's, you know, potent enough or microwave radiation, they're going to fry.
Okay.
Like they're going to be like taken out.
Or does it activate a mode where it starts sending out EMPs back at you, and then it goes into fucking God mode and just says, I don't know, it's my job to survive right now and defend the door. And so whatever it is out here, I don't really determine whether it's living or not. If it moves, I shoot, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. And the new defense methods, there's a backyard scientist, I think he's a YouTuber, and he did this thing where he was trying to make a system where you could throw a basketball and the hoop would move to wherever it was you threw it. And what he accidentally created was a cable-based guillotine system that moved at lightning speed, to the extent where, like, wherever his test floor was, he had to, like, he deals with dangerous stuff, backyard scientist, or I think that's his name, and, like, tells the audience not to try this at home. But this was, he finally built something that scared the crap out of himself, you know? And as far as, like, ancient systems, too, where you just have a deadfall with a wire over a smooth surface, and the first 10 people that walk in there just get decapitated by a piece of stainless steel razor wire that moves at the speed of sound, basically. Yeah, recently he did a project with Mark Rober here where he tried to use a vortex cannon to shoot down a drone as one of 3 or 4 different methods that we're using to counter.
I feel like Mark Rober is too smart, or he makes himself out to be too smart to be just an educator.
Well, he's a businessman. The stuff that he's been selling, I love. As schooling has been moved to the home, and you know, homeschooling has been celebrated as opposed to ridiculed as a way to introduce young people to technology. He has these really interesting kits, and you subscribe.
Oh yeah, like I know that, but I feel like
cool, Lego kits and stuff.
His thing about being like wanting to be a high school teacher one day, I feel is a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, he's almost Bill Nye-esque in his level of you can't tell what's real and what's fake or what's a contrived.
Well, Bill Nye was always an actor.
True.
Like, but Mark Rober kind of, it appears that he
See, he believes that the moon exists and that we
thinks
landed
about
on the
all
moon.
these things, given most
The Mars rover.
YouTubers are. What? Mark Rober?
Yeah, he worked for NASA when they were building a Mars rover.
All right,
I
I'll
think,
tune in just because of the whole BYU thing with Mark Rober. It's hard not to like
I didn't know
acknowledge
that was there. I mean, obviously that's no, sorry.
Sorry.
And not that it's a knock on him in any way, shape, or form. Andreas puts it out there and disappears into the back. I know that's perfect. It's as an audience member, I love it. I'd be laughing out loud at home if I were not on the show right now.
I mean, like, can I just sum it up with this quote? While NASA Rober began making viral videos, his videos covered a wide variety of topics, sparking ideas for April Fool's Day pranks. I mean,
he was sending glitter bombs through Amazon that would
I need you to read Men in Black comic books to understand what April Fool's is for in disclosure terms? Like, do you understand what April Fool's is?
Well, and again, as far as pulling a prank on the universe pulling a prank on us, there's this broadcast media that's available now.
Didn't you bring up the nun's priest tale earlier?
Perhaps.
I feel like this came up.
Nuns, yeah. But so Mark Rober was doing like packages where if you stole them off of someone's front porch, when you opened them, they would have fart spray inside, and then an alarm would go off, and there was like you would put 4 smartphones in there to film these people, these package thieves, and like catch them red-handed, right? But that's one step away from putting, instead of fart spray in there, you're putting some sort of neurotoxin or you're putting some sort of chemical agent. And as far as you can't do that on television because people might try it at home, you're more likely, like even what was it, Beavis and Butthead got in trouble for lighting a washer dryer on fire and like laughing at it and being like, hey, yeah, fire, because apparently kids can't tell the difference between what is something that's acceptable behavior or not. And at a certain age, that's probably true. So Mark Rober does cater to a younger audience, and then he still releases content that encourages the type of thinking and behavior and technological solutions to things where you're creating booby traps essentially and leaving them out for people as bait. And that's generally not a great way to operate.
The one that he did the which was very big. He got a team to design an ML-based solution to what was it? Giant domino domino stack
installations. Yeah.
And that was pretty cool.
He did this one thing where he figured out that if you put tubes underneath sand of a certain particle density and pump air and vibration through it, it becomes quicksand instantly, right? And the way he demonstrated this was to fill his hot tub with sand and have his own children kind of like swimming in this, which thankfully had a very short bottom. But the idea is, again, he basically demonstrated a weapon system where if you need to clear a beach real quick by pressing a button because you have things laid underneath it on a large scale, and what was firm ground, everything literally just kind of disappears underneath the sand. And I would imagine it's kind of hard to breathe under there, let alone move. Once it's like snow, even a foot of snow on top of you. If it's compacted,
vibrating like sand.
You can't really move. And so, YouTube is this place. It's a repository for, again, Mark Rober kind of feels like he was maybe edged out of NASA, or like they didn't keep him in the fold. He wasn't worth their.
I think it's a lot about me, and then that they're just like, no, we want you to be a little bit more quiet.
Yeah, and maybe he started working for Google or something, and he thought the YouTube videos were just a side gig, and then he realized, and then they wanted him to stop doing that stuff because it represented, or the idea is he's kind of representing the company. When he's on YouTube.
He's putting too much time into it that it makes people question, how, is he really doing his NASA job?
Have you heard of Buckminster Fuller?
I don't know, but I do know, like, they had a little joke about that on Mad Men. Like, one of the writers for the ad company didn't drink alcohol because he was writing at night.
Okay.
but that still was enough for him to get hit. He had to be told not to write anymore, like write any short stories anymore.
See, some entrepreneurs will work themselves ragged and burn the candle at both ends, so to speak, which means morning and the evening, and there's only so much creative output and energy in theory. In quality of the quality of the work will diminish. But Buckminster Fuller was the guy who invented buckyballs, or Andreas is right up Andreas's alley with graphene and the structure and lattice work of carbon nanotubes being this octagonal and pentagonal structure. Buckminster Fuller, a buckyball is basically literally a soccer ball. If you trace the outline, it's the same exact shapes of the panels, and it's a carbon. But so he was big into building geodesic domes and stuff. But when he was running companies, he would insist that all of his most technical and creative and his top people, he called it maybe 10% time or 20% time, depending on the project. And you had to spend that time doing like kind of what we're doing now, free association. I didn't know I was going to talk to you, Aiden. So respect.
Yeah,
honor and a privilege. But and then who knows what ideas we come up with. But that the company is the problem comes is then when the company tries to claim that if we come up with something during our 20% time, which otherwise might be considered like leisure time or off time, but it's built into the workday to pace the workday to maximize productivity so that you're not just pushing 8 hours through. Although some people work great that way if they have their head down on a project sort of thing. I don't know, type X, type Y employee. I studied some of this stuff in university. I don't mean to give you a headache on a Saturday.
No,
these Beavis and Butthead animations are great though, huh?
Yeah. Now I'm working on a different Transformer idea too. So, but
there needs to be a show with Beavis and Butthead, Pinky and the Brain, and Ren and Stimpy. Come on, like how do we not have one show that has all of those things? They're all characters in the show, and that's who's interrupting us. Like Andreas should be working on the back end right here to like preload, whether it be Beavis and Butthead or Ren and Stimpy, an avatar to like come in and insult us, or like make fun of us or ask us questions.
Somewhere,
yeah. I mean,
I do have like a rig for Beavis and Butthead. Do you remember that? Like I made that like a couple years ago during COVID randomly. I made like a rig that let you do Beavis and Butthead, and we had them with like Tartaria t-shirts.
And you have personal connections where Mike Judge.
Which is funny is that about Beavis and Butthead
and jump away from
they would be totally like the show that you could introduce a lot of the ML stuff, because that show was purposely written very cheaply.
Which one? Ren and Stimpy or which one?
Beavis and Butthead, I believe.
Yes.
Or they'll often use B-roll footage or footage from other episodes because.
Uh-oh. It's a little choppy.
Use the same animations. I do remember that on them.
Repeat what you were saying.
Beavis and Butthead is perfect for using ML like ideas or concepts because it's so cheaply drawn that they may want to do. They would definitely think about doing that.
Is even if you were giving it to, I mean, Andreas was saying every day that AI makes a mistake, it gets better and gets better, it gets better, it gets better. But even with rudimentary AI, because of the simplicity of the animation style, it would be easier to, and it's not even using whatever they call AI. It's just creating
like dubbing,
some sort
like
of
cartoon
template
dubbing styles. Like there's enough, basic idea of a cartoon like Beavis and Butthead. You have enough talking heads, so you have a model right there of how they do animations. So it would be very easy just to do that. Have use from like a baseline solution of this on GitHub, just the dubbing effect that's specialized for their show.
In architecture, it's called a style book. And like if you're doing a casino and it's a certain brand, they're telling the designers you have to kind of choose from these fabrics and these manufacturers and these styles because it's part of what we already do. In the same way, it's like a style book for a show that's animated like Beavis
Cal
and Butthead
Poly
as
artwork.
opposed to the what?
Cal Poly artwork. Okay, look up this term, Cal Poly artwork. It's a description of how a lot of the like Cartoon Network shows all look the exact same now. Like you have to say it's CALPOLY, and then you so you have to go on to Wiki. I don't know, but
Cal Poly Cal Polyarts.
No, the artwork, like arts, animation, or criticism.
Because you're saying that it's almost like at a certain point with the musical programs, Logic and Reason. I'm sure.
No,
Andreas
I'm saying is
remembers
that there's a
but
certain
it's
type
like
of
you can tell
artwork
that it came out of that machine. Is what
Is
you're
this
saying.
what you're trying to say? Like this or something?
that so many TV shows look very similar. The same type of smile, like the person in the with the blonde hair, that smile, the jaw, the like oval jaw. That's it. That people started really getting sick and tired of it, and you will see this now where
I'd say they're consuming too much content. if they're really angry about that, find something more entertaining.
I can
complaining about the animation style of the people that are creating stuff for you.
I can get behind it though. Like I do the same thing where I notice I'm like, oh man, this is made with Toon Boom, or oh, this is made with like whatever software, and like there's ways you can use it.
Yeah, so go back to the screen. There was a 9 grid. See, this is what I was trying to say. I think what the work that Aiden does would be great for the type of game that I was trying to describe this, I think, a couple Sundays ago, where as a child, you just enter a few lines of dialogue and you pick the animation style, and it does something a little bit better than 8-bit Nintendo graphics of people saying the words. And that's all the game has to be.
Yeah. I mean, but
and
like,
especially if it's like kept within certain, there's no jiggle physics in it, it's like, it's kept within boundaries of.
This is all the same style though. This is all Toon Boom style, which is funny.
Sure.
Like,
sure. I mean, that's perfect.
Well, like you remember Rugrats Klasky Kuspo, that company? They did all the shows on Nickelodeon, like with Cat Dog. A lot of those
Sure.
they all had Klasky Kuspo. But that's
it's about what do we accept as customers?
Kind of weird, stringy, kind of homemade look that Rugrats even had too, is that they just got sick and tired of them. And
as consumers,
even though like
tweets,
Rugrats is like still popping like good, and they're like, no, we have to evolve to actually being just not Nickelodeon, the which they called the Seinfeld for kids. But they just cut off that animation style because they thought it was just too well known, or it was just too boring. Now no one liked it.
Or someone threatened to copyright it, and so everyone just went a different direction, because why bother risking stepping on someone's toes where all your work is going to be, somehow categorized in the future as derivative of something else, and therefore you owe money or get shamed.
Now they're trying to do this weird 3D animation thing on Rugrats, and I guess they're now trying to do that with a lot of other shows because it feels a little bit more novel, or it feels like it takes more hard work to do it.
On one hand, there's the idea of putting this type of technology or these types of, facilitating access for people that are not prosumers. They really don't know how to code. They don't know the back end, but they are very creative, and they would love interacting with a platform like that. And they might create a huge amount of content with it, whether or not it's noteworthy or sellable. It's still an entertaining thing. Instead of playing RBI baseball, or playing a FIFA soccer, they're engaged in skit making and scene making and dialogue writing. And it's just a different type of activity for people to interact with, and then giving them.
That's actually an interesting concept though, of like doing that, but like with video game controls.
Sure.
Like,
so you kind of set up a scene, and then you can navigate it, right? It's like you've instead of giving that person lines of dialogue, you program them as a certain type of NPC, and so that the walkthrough you do is, it's like you create a funny scene, and you show your friends the work you've been doing by walking them through the scene you've created, and it's different each time you do it. That guy tells a different joke, or sometimes he trips and falls, or and it's because you've programmed certain parameters not only into the environment but the characters within that environment. I mean, I think and again, it's not the type of thing that's as exciting to watch as Fortnite for some people, but that doesn't mean there's not a huge market for it.
It's interesting what's going on that stuff. I do have this feeling though that once you get too much ML stuff in it, people will get very used to it. And especially if it's all from one company or one style, I think there is that thing of, people get very uninterested in it. I don't know how Fortnite has been so well at, though, keeping up the attention or just constantly changing shit.
Yeah, they change it all the time. But they're
And
also making it so you can create it. Actually, I wanted to bring that up earlier. There's this project. You heard about Project Titan that Unreal's doing? It's like an art jam. So basically, they're like, hey, we've created like a 4 square mile world, and we've organized it into like 8 biomes, which is pretty vast for such a small space. But 8, it's pretty big still. And then you can just create in it. And so they're going to then release the project to the community, kind of like the way Blender makes free projects, right? And they make like a whole thing and they give you, it's like open sourced along the way. So it's kind of interesting because like they've also created a Unreal Fortnite editor, the UEFN engine, and so like kids can learn how to make games in Fortnite and how to like build playable content in Fortnite. So you can do literally anything in this engine, and this is based on that principle that like 20-30 years ago someone would make like a Quake or a Doom engine and then they'd license it to like 30 other games. 30 other people would use that same engine to make another game, flip the assets to be about Mario or you know what I mean, Zelda. Right.
Or like all the complicated stuff on actually creating the animation or like how the walls.
Yeah. But basically, like, with Unreal Engine, there's a lot of things you can do because that's the other thing I was noticing. Like my mom came in with the New Yorker with this freaking crazy cover of like dying mice being murdered behind this solemn cat. And then, but the article was about
Rorschach. I see that they're celebrating. That was like a hip hip hooray, and they threw a few mice in the air. What do you mean they're dying? No, sorry, just keep going.
There's definitely blood splatters like in the picture.
I think that's
frosting.
To be some esoteric.
Frosting is not helping your story. That's the problem. But Get Real is this article, and it's like
plenty of religious rights with blood. Sorry.
Get Real is this article, and it's talking about the Unreal Engine. And I think she finally kind of got it because of the way it's like framed. It's like NASA uses it to visualize terrain on the moon. Sesame Street Workshop scan the set of Sesame Street to have 3D models of everything so they can constantly build the sets and not have to actually be there, and they can composite things.
Marvel does all of their action scenes in it beforehand.
Yeah, the Barbie, Batman, Top Gun Maverick, the film, they're talking about all that stuff. But also like science and medicine can run their simulations in real time now, which they could never do before. It used to be like all this crazy like months of rendering the Event 201 project. Now you can just have a sim city of people dying of viruses in your virtual reality that you
with
can
the push of a couple buttons, you could simulate like a NICU,
the death and suffering of so many people. Yes.
What would happen if you had 100 pre-planned C-sections versus 100 people who went into labor, and then the amount of resources you need and the amount of they're called compound wounds. I think is what they're called.
I don't know. I feel like more people prefer now people to get C-sections over like.
I really don't want to do the C-section.
I'm excited that someone else has heard that because it's not true.
No, it's weird. Like especially when you see all these weird like women on.
We're supposed to be this uncomfortable talking about abortions. C-sections is fine. Did you just end the stream on us?
No, I was just busy.
I mean, there is a valid.
I'm interested to hear what he has to say. Andreas knows what I have to say.
I just want to say the Unreal Engine thing. They realize not everyone.
That's true. We're not trying to alienate future business.
Not everyone's trying to simulate viruses right now or sections. Some of them are trying to simulate games, and like really most games are the same, either first person or third person running around games. Like you could have a car or whatever. It's either you're holding a gun in the first person. So like really there's a lot of ways that you can use the Unreal Engine, but you don't need to use that. Like having a Fortnite editor gives you most of the features you need to make whatever kind of game you want. So I think you're going to see like thousands of games instead of hundreds.
Yeah, but it's like they do not have that though. Sometimes they do have the great advertisement where you and I'm thinking of a PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. But I also wanted to mention, did you guys play KSP yet? At least look it up.
KSP game?
Yeah, Kerbal Space Program.
Oh right. You pulled it. I didn't play it because I'm sorry. I feel bad. Can we look at it on YouTube though? Can't we watch
Yeah,
it?
just like look it up on YouTube, because this is the essential Mark Rober game. I think Mark Rober's probably even played it on YouTube.
Okay, so it's like a simulation building a rocket ship.
Yeah, and then you get to control that rocket ship, and it has like hard limits.
So this is interesting to me because earlier today I was talking to this dude about like game design, and one of the jokes I brought up, because I don't know, he was trying to make fun of flat Earth and all these things. And I said, isn't it kind of interesting though that in every video game, like every game is always programmed to be flat Earth? Like every single game is on a flat plane, except for this one. It looks like they've tried to add some curvature.
Mario Galaxy.
Okay, Mario Galaxy, but even Mario Galaxy is on a flat plane because it's in an empty
just like
space.
we were talking.
Mario Galaxy is on a flat plane that is empty space. It has spheroids in it, but that is kind of close to the whole point of space. But yeah, still,
it's like bonus
it's
games.
not based on actual gravity, because gravity has to do with this idea of being perpendicular to the surface at any point, which isn't the case. He's just got like some magnetism of density.
It's called the normal force.
So I don't know. Like none of the things, I've never seen a physics engine that actually emulates the way that they say things work according to NASA. So it'd be interesting if they're trying to do that, to say, okay, here's the NASA like physics reality. Here's what would happen according to what we understand.
Yeah, I mean, when we really think about the flat Earth, round Earth argument, and we've only gone down 8 miles, whether it be in the ocean or in a borehole, and the fact that there could be thousands of miles of who knows what underneath should terrify all of us.
Fun fact:
the idea that the whole surface of the Earth could instantly reconfigure because something burped 500 miles down is totally realistic. At any moment,
it's like something on the lines of, I think they did this on the giant borehole that Russia did.
Yeah.
They've went like 20 miles down, and they started noting there's a lot of hydrogen gas, or spewing hydrogen gas, and this is like at most a 6-inch hole or something like that. But
but pressure finds its way. If you have a water column that's even like 20 feet tall, just in a tube, down at the bottom, it's about the amount of weight of water. You can like cut steel by poking a pinprick in an aquarium that's 20, 30 stories or 20, 30 feet tall.
I was just going to say.
And in the borehole, so you're talking about they're finding hydrogen, and then I'll toss it back. Eventually, that hydrogen becomes dissolved in the rock and in the metal or in the water. And it's this quasi-metallic hydrogen that is like present in everything because it's under such great pressure and density. But yeah, what were you?
Dude, you know what's going to be sweet? Basically, with Unreal Engine
5 or 6 times.
Every time somebody makes a TV show now, 90% of that TV show is all like special effects models. So what you can do then is you can extend your TV show story by having a game where like you just like assemble the models that you had your actors run around in. And now you can have like playable scenes basically in like 30 minutes. So that means basically every TV show is going to bleed into games next year. That's kind of what I'm predicting.
Also amazing and fascinating. But I stepped on Adrian's toes.
I think that's true.
Twice in a row there, both about C-sections and then this. So this time we'll let him finish his point. Yeah, we'll continue to skip over the reproductive health issues.
No, it's cool. We can talk about.
I was just saying, there's like 5 times as much water in our mantle than in the seas. Allegedly.
And when they say it's in the mantle, it's in the form of there are crystals that have these branches that come off of them that say H2O. So you have this powder and you can pour water on it and it will grow into a gel that's like this huge volume. But it's because there's a crystalline lattice that is holding water that you have to really heat it or shock it with certain things to make it let go of that water. And it's like when we say we're made of mostly water, that's not really true by any stretch of any imagination. But
did you see this AI pop band's necklace? Look at her. She got the Aleister Crowley necklace going on right
there.
It's
AI.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's AI, but it's like, looks like Unreal Engine probably.
Wow.
A lot of it. But that's the thing is like these Unreal image, like a lot of these games are made on Unreal.
These chicks are stylish,
constantly
dude.
Is changing its parameters to make everything unique. They're eventually going to have this problem of people just get sick and tired of it. And a good example of this is Disney.
You mean like the hyper realistic stylization will be boring, you're saying?
Yeah, so Disney.
Yeah, well then so again,
they go through the Pixar thing. they'll do different types of pics. Well, sometimes they just have a shitty story or a story that's not really compelling, or it's like they have to put a black woman as the main character.
Mm-hmm.
But you get this type of thing of every, 10, 20 years, you'll see Disney makes 5 flops in a row that were animated flicks. And part of that is because people just get sick and tired of the animation style, or they just get bad, not compelling stories.
Yeah, like Project Titan, what they're doing is they're making everything really cartoony, which is kind of interesting because everything we've seen in Unreal Engine so far has been like really hyper realistic. So they're inviting a new aesthetic that can exist where things are mystical or fantastical, and that's great. Like they had a physics engine, and now they have an artist team. They didn't really before. The artist team before was like, well, you guys like to make games, and Fortnite's always been kind of cartoony, right? And they've aimed for kids. So what you're going to see is like a everything possible. Everything from it's kind of like Picasso, right? Picasso started out like Picasso realism. Everyone thinks of Picasso's paintings as being like cubism, but before he did cubism, he learned how to paint perfectly. He was
he had his blue period. No, he had a whole bunch of different.
Yeah, so like in order for Unreal Engine to get to the place where it can do abstract art that is a great, it is a granular effect on perfection. So you have to start out.
There's a movie called Megalopolis, and there's a big name director, Francis Ford Coppola, attached his name to this, and they're trying to reimagine New York City after it's recovered from a series of natural disasters. And so it's the city with the existing layout, but rebuilt, because, this area was rebuilt because there was a tidal wave here, and, the river flooded. And then, so this area district had to be rebuilt. And it's kind of this interesting, it could be a real government exercise to have on the back burner, or, just in case you need to pull something off the back shelf in the result of a disaster. You're not just reacting and mitigating the harm. You actually already kind of have a plan to fix it. And then it's problem, reaction, solution. The question is, when those natural disasters do likely eventually occur, do people blame the architects because they planned for those types of things to happen? But that's and so the reason they keep delaying the release of this movie, and I bet it's because the director doesn't accept whatever large panoramic views they have of the city. They're being auto-generated, and they're not up to snuff. The artwork, it used to be done by hand, or it used to be done in a more
well, they can't get anybody to distribute it either. He may have to actually do the distribution himself.
With Megalopolis, I wonder.
A lot of these things, like I don't know, if you make it into a game, like it seems like game market is replacing movie market, and so like
Zendaya, Adam Driver, Shia LaBeouf, those are the Aubrey Plaza, Grace VanderWaal.
Well, it's like
Natalie Emmanuel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how anybody actually goes to a film thinking, "Oh, I want to see because Shia LaBeouf's in it."
Right. No, for me, as the cool factor would be seeing what the artists are able to conceive of and display when it comes to a futuristic New York City. What is if
oh
we
my
are
God, is
trying
Tom
to reimagine?
Holland going to be a prostitute in the film?
I don't know.
That'd be kind of cool. Yeah. So I don't know. Here's a million particles with shadows running at like a cool 100 frames per second. It's crazy.
So should I mix it up and read an excerpt from something that was published in 1872 and was distributed at the World's Peace Jubilee?
Yeah.
International Music Festival in Boston. It says, "To the chorus," and they assembled a chorus of 10,000 people in groups of 20 to 100 people from local churches. It says, "In justice to all parties." Again, I love that this was typed up and distributed back in 1870. This was fit to print. So, "In justice to all parties, and especially to a few societies who have been disappointed in the receipt of their tickets at the time promised, the superintendent deems it proper to explain that intelligence was not communicated to his department until a late hour, that the number of chorus seats was insufficient for the accommodation of all the societies. To provide an additional number, an entire change in the original plan was necessary, and the labor of printing tickets was vastly increased. To add to our complications, the party in charge of the printing, who performed the service so satisfactorily for the Peace Jubilee in 1869, has been stricken down by severe illness, causing several delays. Nothing has been spared which could be in any way facilitate matters, and we cannot doubt that the singers will accept this explanation and aid the superintendent in promoting our common interest, even if for the first day or two it should be found impracticable to give each his proper seat. All will be satisfactorily arranged at the earliest possible moment. Thank you, your superintendent of the chorus. And the fact that it's preserved in such pristine condition means they didn't just print it on like the back of something. I mean, this is a document that the ink has lasted crisp. There's no, it didn't mold. There's probably watermarks on here. I mean, they knew what they were doing back then. Even certain countries' money doesn't hold up as well over time. But Boston was really doing the thing back in those days.
Yeah, Boston, you know, the whole thing banned in Boston. Like, there were all these people that were trying to get their books to be banned in Boston because if you could get your book banned, then it was popular. And there was a guy who bought rights to a horticulture book. It was all about flowers and everything. He's like trying to get it banned in Boston so he can sell it for more money.
Yes.
So he goes to Boston. Like, you and the Bostonians are like, we don't really see the problem with this. This is like a flower book. It's like, you don't understand. The birds and the bees, this is clearly hypersexualized nonsense that they're just
and you have to right now you have to grift
subliminally message
against yourself.
A horticulture book. How dare
you see that? It's the start of fake news where you have people who are grifting against themselves because if they rabble rouse against the book they wrote and get it banned here, even if no one knows they're the author, all they have to do is go to a couple big churches and be like, "Can you see what's coming? The devil, the devil!" And as long as enough people sign the petition and get it on that list somehow,
well,
they sell a lot of books.
Then it's like
it's
totally mandated. Oh, you have to read this in high school.
They're going to get all the children reading this, and their first
that was what I found ironic.
This is their understanding of God, nature, and they're saying nature is this hypersexual beast.
There was a video of
lust after itself. How could you let this in the kids' schools? And then, he ended up making a lot of money off of that book.
Yeah, and today the context of banned books is not like, is To Kill a Mockingbird too culturally like forward, or that uses the N-word, or does it portray bad stereotypes? Now it's like, do we teach the kids how to perform fellatio or with cartoons or not? I mean, again, that's totally. But what seemed ironic because growing up, we're just outside of Boston, there was a YouTube list of the top 10 books that were banned from schools, and it was. All 10 books were required reading as part of my curriculum in high school. So whatever it was they did, as whether you banned them for sale or you were able to put a stamp on them for cultural sensitivity reasons, trigger warning style, or
so if we could get like
wait, I never read this before. Apparently this started from the $5 bill, which the 1896 Educational Society found
is there a boob exposed?
There was a boob on the thing.
Where?
I don't know. The $5 bill from the 1896 Educational Series banknotes featured allegorical figures that were partially nude.
I guess.
Is it really this one?
It's the androgynous child, and is it the fact that it like left certain people wondering if it was a guy or a girl, and it's like, well, why are you focusing on that part of the image?
Oh yeah, here we go. The $5 bill. That's why.
The front of it.
Awesome.
Dude, talk about a beautiful banknote, though.
Dude, like America, right? Wouldn't you have been like stoked? Be like, yeah, we have powerful money.
That's what the tickets to the Peace Jubilee look like, and to the World's Fair.
I want this bill. This is all the lightning flashing through is like epic.
The thing is, the really rich people would be like, I don't care anything about this festival. I want to figure out who printed the tickets for this fair because they can print money for me. I'm pretty sure. Like, look at the tickets. Look at the back of that bill, man, with a winged griffin with the human face. Dang.
This certifies that there have been deposited in this treasury of the United States $5 silver.
Dude, that's just see. And even as a technician and an artist, it's hard to understand how they created things so fine. And then part of the magic too is they didn't just like a copper plate is impressive, but you can only get about 10 prints off it before the plate itself degrades. Whereas they make these things out of alloys that you can stamp them 10,000 times at a certain pressure, and it doesn't dull the edge of whatever intaglio carving is on there. I mean, it's a whole bunch of disciplines working together. Because it's one thing to be able to print 100 banknotes. It's another thing to be able to print 100,000 banknotes. It's another thing, to be able to buy the things to print 100,000 banknotes. It's another thing to be able to make the things that can print 100,000 banknotes, because then you can print 1 million banknotes.
William Blake made such crazy artwork with copper.
And Zimbabwe's currency was kind of almost famous for going belly up a few times. The last time they had
it always goes belly up.
gold holographic, the new hundreds, and even when the new 20s came out, there was this special ink on there, and instead of it just being the dark green ink, you would move it in the light, right? And it was a kind of prismatic ink. You know what I'm talking about, Aiden?
Well, yeah.
Oh, well, so the Zimbabwe currency also had that as one of their security features, okay, as this prismatic ink. And a certain person looks at their ink and just wants to get in touch with their government to figure out who has the secret formula for the ink that makes it glisten the same exact way, because it was awfully similar to the new money in America. Zimbabwe was creating these bills that had these little, again, prismatic ink things on there, because they developed, for all you know, it was technology that they bought or borrowed or developed independently, but it was awfully similar to the new stuff that America was. So in that bottom right-hand corner there, that little symbol is done in that, and all the bills was done in a type of flashy ink.
Well, it's also about, I
Prismatic
guess,
ink.
a lot of what Zimbabwe has problems with is that simply a lot of the people that would normally invest or keep that currency stable or somewhat stable, they just don't do it because they kicked all the whites out. So, like,
That's a bit reductionist. No, you don't think that?
Well, if a place kicked all the blacks out too, maybe the banks would throw a fit as well. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not taking.
But
I don't know anything about the history.
I think what happened was when they took over, they would not.
There are other things than
any
white and
type
black
of
people.
international loans. I don't think they paid back anything.
Zimbabwe had a lot of problems, and I think making it into an ethno state was certainly a fail, like a bad idea. It destroyed the Rhodesian infrastructure that they had that could have made Zimbabwe a much more powerful country. It created racial tension in Africa that was already, it furthered racial tension, and it's led to further.
They had car factories there.
Yeah,
I stepped foot in Zimbabwe over the border near Victoria Falls, and it was during daylight hours. And as it was getting dark, it was really impressed upon us that no. There are areas that are somewhat safe during the day, but as it gets closer to nighttime, if you have any food on you, you're going to give it up.
The alternative is to say that Cecil Rhodes was so great and that his infrastructural plan in Africa, which, like, don't get me wrong, like bringing in technocrats from Europe to build up Africa, like there's something you could say to that. But the way he went about it was to divide up Africa. He put two tribes who've been warring with each other for 1,000 years in the same country, make a line in between a tribe so that they were cut off from each other, make new country lines that had nothing to do with the environmental resources. So all of a sudden you have a country that has to rely on another country and vice versa. There's no autonomy. This is all Western prescriptive cultural planning. And I think that
it's almost like a form of gerrymandering, no?
Yeah, I would just say it's also genocide. And there's some serious issues that happen because of it. It would be ridiculous for me to say that Zimbabwe's choices were that much worse, and in fact, I don't think they were, than Cecil Rhodes' choices in the creation of Rhodesia. Now, granted, Cecil Rhodes' Rhodesia was more successful, but that also was because Cecil Rhodes had control of the De Beers family, the diamond market, scarcity of Africa was in connection with the Oxford Studies Society. So the fact that the Rhodes Scholarship was created by Quigley at Cambridge and at Oxford meant that you had connections to the elite families, obviously, including like the Clinton. Bill Clinton was part of the Rhodes Scholarship. So you see, even into the point where they're destroying Rhodesia and building Zimbabwe, there seems like there's some sort of an elite plan that's letting this happen. Why is it that they're doing that? Like I think they found that there was too much autonomy that was allowed, and probably the Rhodesian government, like the elite, probably wanted to stop the autonomy of the Rhodesian state.
But this is why America was
know any Rhodesians? I know a ton of Rhodesians, and they're probably better off in Paraguay and Australia.
In our political cartoons, published was like a bunch. It was like Uncle Sam and Confederate soldier, like over a cake, and the cake says the world, and they're like trying to figure out which pieces to cut up and make for themselves, and it was the threat of capitalism. And I'm not saying anything to counter or to say that the gerrymandering and genocide wasn't a result. There is a place that I learned about that I visited, Malawi, and Malawi is a very small country in Africa, and its boundaries didn't do what it was you were saying, where it didn't force multiple tribes that were already fighting to live within a certain boundary, or to operate under a common set of rules or recognize a certain authority. And instead, it was matriarchal tribes. And so the village elders were women that had multiple husbands. And Malawi is a place where they didn't have gasoline for anything but emergency and government vehicles for like 4 years. Their economy went belly up, and yet their starvation rate and homelessness rate did not significantly increase the way it would in other countries if they get cut off of gasoline, essentially, so that all private citizens no longer have the ability to transport themselves or goods from place to place. And so Malawi, on one hand, it is not a tired trope, or it's certainly worth bringing attention to, the way that Africa was divided up in a way that led to lots of strife and lots of hardship and probably lingering tensions. But Malawi in particular, even though money wasn't always the most abundant thing culturally, somehow because they were a matriarchal tribe, or because of what was done. There we go. Thanks, Aiden. I feel like we're about to watch him take a piss. No.
Doing hair. I'm thinking of going to a club in Austin tonight.
Solid. I hear Stein's been performing around town, but
Yeah.
I know you're not a total groupie.
I'm like it's like a hate-love relationship. I'll tell you. Yeah. So
It's probably how he feels about himself most of the time too.
I think in a way it's like I have to understand that. I think how I get sometimes panic attacks if I'm not like what I'm working on isn't like. I feel like it's a great idea and it's not going to be picked up or something. And then I go crazy from that. I have to respect that Alex will do the same thing if he thinks anybody could possibly screw up his comedy career, even though the vast majority of what screws him up is him just not listening to when somebody's like, hey, this is a bad idea. This is a bad idea. Don't do it. Oh, you did it.
Yeah, of all the things I could name
of,
on two hands the types of things that would get most people fired from whatever it was they were doing, and his audience is small enough. I still think that like he's had a few times where it's like, hey, opt into this social media feed, or call this number. And if he ever actually runs for politics, it's someone's job to go like burn all his old contacts and make sure that the 1,000 people that were fans of his from a while ago aren't around or able to vouch for anything that he said before 2025.
Yeah, there is that.
Because he does have a certain presence,
presence,
and he, outside of like being a big guy, he had someone else dress up in a similar suit and pretend to be, he like blew a whistle and subbed in a guest host. And no, he's got a certain magnanimity, and I'm sure people have been telling him to get into politics, but maybe a conflict of interest with the business that his family. I remember at one point I was trying to talk to Andreas online about his father being a bail bondsman, this, that, or the other, and Andreas was like, I know nothing about what you're talking about. I think his father's name is Tucker Carlson, actually. And I'm like, yeah. That's what I meant to say. But no. He like brought his own dad eventually on his own show. And it's a very interesting process that he's going through.
And it was funny because it's like his dad is like this citizen of the town. He grew up here. He knows everyone in high places, or everyone that became the the councilman or a guy that owns a lot of companies.
And it's because he was under protective custody to some extent.
He is essentially Dallas. And it's funny. It's like, Alex is a comedian now, but he like burned a lot of bridges. Like, his dad's bail bonds business, which is Texas is a huge bail bonds place. Like, people like they it's not like a bailless place. So,
and he may stand to inherit a certain amount of wealth or be in charge of managing a certain amount of wealth.
I guess. I think.
But the idea, again, it's not a great business. Again, it's a very profitable business. I understand that, but he looks at the risk that his father had to assume on behalf of his family. And he may be choosing to try to buck that and do everything he can to make sure that he is clearly not the heir apparent to whatever large
there is
business
like, well, it's
empire
like
his
it's a
father
bail
has
bondsman
created and
thing.
networks,
It's
and he
like
may be
it's
very, he have the kind of the right and the ability to step into that role. But for me personally, again, it was like a family business, and now there's a lot of other people in the business. And if I got back into it now, and the perception that I'm like leapfrogging people or somehow assuming a role in management when they're still stuck lower on the totem pole, again, that's how people.
It's a much more dangerous job now too. Just when he said, because like Alex used to go on ride-alongs when he was like in 5th and 6th grade of doing it. As Dallas grew, or it became easier to live here. There became more of an urban thug, population that just got larger and larger, and now they have guns, so they will fight back.
Yeah. Well, and what it sounds like is like bringing a child on a drug deal as like insurance that nothing's going to go wrong. But instead, it was like a bail bondsman deal, because again, it's not, they're not dealing with illicit substances, but it is a large cash transfer. In one way, if you owe someone a lot of money, in anyone's mind, if they're desperate, if they don't know what to do, if their back's against the wall, people do stupid shit, as you say. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it is a grind. It's like, have you ever listened to Instagram people who are bounty hunters? It's a grind, bro. It's like 4 or 5 minutes driving. You're kind of like chasing, people purely for the bounty of it.
Well, even the show Cheaters, people's lives get ruined on camera, and like Alex was like willing to lean into the Cheaters. And he would probably even do,
I think Cheaters, though, how he got screwed out of that job, and he was living the shit out of him.
Well, peace by force, yeah, we'll make it right. In the name of justice, we'll shine a light.
Call us from woke.
We distribute the wealth, leveling the playing field. No more exploitation, that's the deal.
Being replaced with a black guy. The black guy has to change his last name because
what an artificial black guy. May I?
They had a rapper that wanted to be a TV host really badly.
I wonder if you get your heart broken on Cheaters, if they hook you up with a dating service afterwards and you get to like date NBA players or like at least college athletes.
Everyone on that show is faked.
Former college athletes or not?
Like they're paid like $1,000, $2,000 or $3,000 to do it. It's all in cash. They sign a non-disclosure agreement, but it's all fake.
So there's a covert program within our government where all the cheerleaders for all the professional teams and college teams, they get sent in as peacekeepers. And when they're about to like fight and like they just send out the girls with the pom-poms and like the skimpy outfits, and they start like jumping around and doing splits and stuff. And like everyone decides to get along for a second and like talk things out instead. It's just,
yeah.
You do the right number of backflips and all of a sudden you get world peace. Pretty sure that's how it works.
Meta world peace.
Beyonce would say just information.
Communist, pinko to the core. Spreading peace and love, but you can't ignore. Gonna reshape the world, make it all fair and square. No more private property, we're all gonna share. Call me PC, cause I'm politically correct. Using words like weapons, gotta show respect. Manipulate the language, control the narrative. Make you question everything, make you wanna live.
I wanna live. Make you wanna live.
And they say the left can't mean. No, I mean, like, I feel like that's all you just take over. If they're bad at memeing, then you just take over, right? It's like,
it's what it's all about.
Yeah. Are there people in the chat? I don't feel any. I see any ones.
Oh, interesting.
You don't see the chat? I see the chat. There's a lot of people. I see.
I know.
Watching. We got,
and,
you might be on Xirtus channel 2 as opposed to Xirtus channel 1.
Yeah, we got some people here.
Not that Xirtus channel 2 actually exists.
UK,
that was a rumor. That was just a rumor.
I think Liddy Steinen said that her father's name is, my son's name is Andres. My father, I don't know if I pronounced it the exact way you do. Let me know. Andres, maybe. Andres. Father, neuroscientist, in it. Nice.
In it.
And
You got to be careful. Sometimes British people think you're making fun of them if you say "in it" to them, but they're
In it?
allowed to say it.
Isn't it so? I don't make fun of British people. Never.
The Celtics are winning 30-16, by the way.
Huh. Good for them.
I know you're all interested.
I feel like it'd be weird if they,
Pretty
you know, I don't know. I really want like a weird sport game where like what happened? Well, they all like resolved their differences, and so there wasn't really a like they walked out on the field and they all shook hands at the beginning of the game, and then they realized there was nothing to fight over.
They told they were changing the rules, told the referees to go home, and they still played the game, no problem.
You know what would be cool is if you had both teams trying to get as many goals as possible. So it's like, how many goals can you kick into the? Like, here, I'll help you get it into our goal, and then you help us get it into theirs, and then we'll just have 400 to 400. You know, it's fine. But like,
I mean, what Ice Cube is mixing it up. There is a 3-on-3 league. It's half court, and you still have to have skills, but there's just you don't have to have quite as much cardio because you're not running up and down the court, and there's just slightly different strategy. Growing up playing 3-on-3 when you would warm up with your team, sometimes the best 3-on-3 team, none of them would be starters, but they could beat a 3-on-3 team of all the best players, all those, you know.
Well, they also don't want like people
guys.
that are recently out of the NBA. You have to be like 30 or something.
Maybe, yeah. There's
something
conflicts of
about
interest.
like
You can
giving
play
other
for your
people,
national
like, a
team,
little
but
shot in it.
if you get injured playing 3-on-3, you might void your other contract. So, which is what in Little League, when kids grow up, it's like, how many innings are you pitching for what team, and then they have innings limits for different leagues, and are they cumulative between the leagues, or are they separate? And it's interesting. And whereas in softball, you have one pitcher who can pitch 5 games in a row. Usually that's kind of par for the course if you have one all-star pitcher.
So stupendous. In every way, he's just tremendous. With a smile that's contagious and a heart so
I mean, really, dude, we should make a musical. AI.
This is delightful. Audacious. Again, they just keep going to that word.
He's bringing laughter and cheer wherever he breathes. His laughter echoed through.
One of the things I like to think about is like how great it would be if there really are like 8 or 9 million people. Because with those kind of numbers, the likelihood of finding the demographics that's into this stuff is plausible.
Was that Peter Parker? Aiden, was that Peter Parker?
No, that was Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, that's right.
Tom Holland did play
Peter
Peter
for a
Parker in
second.
Spider-Man, I think is his point.
Oh yeah,
because I couldn't actually pick Tom Holland out, but that is yes, yeah. All right, solid. We got there. Go team.
I always think I Peter Parker will always be the one from 2001, Tobey Maguire, not Tom Holland.
Fair enough.
I don't know.
So we should all point at each other. Isn't that the meme?
Yeah, he's the guy that would do that.
All the
Tobey
Spider-Man
Maguire,
pointing at
who I
each other.
sometimes always get mixed up with Jake Gyllenhaal, which I'm not sure if anybody else does that, but I sometimes do.
Someone wrote and performed a country music song for Alex Stein live. Like serenaded him with it. I couldn't tell if it was AI or not, or if the guy did it himself.
Well, somebody did actually do that on his show 2 days ago. That was really funny.
Yeah. No, they played a clip of that where he's doing stage work now. He says all he really has to do is talk about his wife's boyfriend as the opening joke, and it loosens up the whole room, and then he doesn't really have to be that funny afterwards. But it's a pretty good joke. It catches people off guard. Yeah.
I know, but it's like I wish he would like just scream out "cuck" every time he does that.
What would that do for you?
I don't know. It would give me an existential like, oh yes, somebody said the C word.
Yeah, I feel like that's all I would do.
What Alex Jones used to refer to Owen Schroyer as "cuck destroyer," but eventually that comes back to bite you somehow.
Yeah,
that you're sending. It's like whenever anyone shits on trans people, or eventually you're just sending out signals into the universe to fuck with you.
So here's the thing on that I was just thinking about, because like on one hand you got like America, and we're like we get a lot of freedom and people get all excited about freedom, And then people get like, hey man, I'm sick of this and that. But people talking about trans thing, I feel like it shows a lack of worldliness, because if you've lived in the world and you've seen like Filipino transgendered people be murdered in the street, for instance, God forbid, then you don't have the same like rejection of trans people. It just doesn't exist in you the same way. If your only impression is like, oh, I live at home, I'm on my computer, I don't go outside very much. If I do, I go to church. I've never seen
relatively speaking, it might be the safest time.
The
Like,
first
this is a
trans
time
person
where
they
you can
see
love
is,
whoever you want. But
the
that's
first
only
trans
true
person they
since
see is a psyop
everywhere.
manipulation from the TV channel about how there's books being read to children. And so this is the main way people see trans people. They don't see them as like the way 99% of the trans people I've ever met are. In fact, 100%, because I've never actually met one of the ones from the psyops on TV that are like reading to kids and ruining their lives. Although I see the pictures and I know it's a big problem and everyone wants to talk about it. I'm just saying, like, I've met trans people. None of them like they work in video games, like they make music.
Yeah, they're all in very masculine, high tech. Like trans women, they typically have very technical skills.
Yeah, like I know, like the work for
it's
security firms that do satellites. Yeah, exactly. Like
it's
they're
never
running
like a
running
woman who
prostitution
just, like,
rings and
sitting at
brothels is
home
different,
knitting.
and then you have gay brothels, and then you have trans brothels, and which one's going to get persecuted first?
It reminds me of Eddie Izzard. He's like, yeah, like executive transvestite, you know, like that. It's not, there's a different, sure, like you see on TV, like this idea that there's some guy in a barn and you think that's me. No, I'm not like this guy in the barn. I'm the executive transvestite, right?
I mean,
But they talk about like leagues, sports leagues, where, you know, okay, if we're having trouble figuring out who can play, but then the problem is there's such a financial disparity in making it in a sport and not making it in a sport. You're going to have people performing procedures on themselves in order to qualify, not having really anything to do with anything other than perhaps sterilizing themselves.
Hot take: Eddie Izzard's based. I don't know. I'm pretty convinced. I'm pretty convinced Eddie Izzard's based. I don't know what else to say. He can speak like 18 languages. Not very well. Like
the cultural statement on this for a while was the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Andreas said he saw that live. But like that was the transvestites from Transylvania, and it was. I mean, I don't know. It perhaps reductive. Perhaps some people don't like that movie at all. Actually, they don't like the way it portrays.
Yeah, I get like the like rolling level turf thing too. Like that's fine. Like what was that? I just saw a hilarious meme that was like you know, transgendered women entering the lesbian dating online apps, you know, and like how that must suck for you. Oh yeah, okay, agreed. But that's different. Like, see, again, like I can agree with like where you want your own personal space to exist or anything like that.
Well, it's like I had a friend who got diagnosed with herpes.
Like, the idea is like you have to
understand, like, and then he realized there was this whole dating network of people that he could.
If you've never known the world before, and your first introduction to transgender people is like the Hollywood version of transgender people, you're gonna have a different perspective than me, because my first introduction is people in the third world, and people in the third world who are like prostitutes, been traumatized their whole lives in weird circumstances, and it makes
beefsteak Pete.
Yeah, or not just third world. Again, like she is saying, Aiden's saying that we should have that there are like hyper brilliant, probably sometimes autistic people that are so, you know, trapped in their mind or something like. I mean, I don't know. They're brilliant.
Yeah, it's like a very schizoid thing of I have to fight against the whole world too. I mean, you get a lot of them are like PhDs in military studies. Like it's, and you know, some people have like will say there is nothing really traditionally feminine about any of your personality.
Well, it depends on what you understand femininity to be, because like women
when I
women
think of
ran
like,
the economy, women ran the war.
I don't know any of them actually.
Like British judges wear wigs because women used to run the courts, right? So we have like the idea like that I also find funny is like the anti-trans movement. Then men are like, oh, people wearing dresses. You're literally fighting to wear slaves in women's clothes. And 1,000 years ago, you wore a toga or a kilt. And now you're telling me that you want to demand that you dress the way you forced women and slaves to dress. Women and slaves, the only reason trousers existed was because you didn't want your slaves and women to be raped. Okay? And now you're telling me you want to wear that, and you're saying that's masculinity. I don't agree. I would rather wear a toga. I don't care if the people think that that's weird, you know, at this point. And maybe this is like the issue with that. And also the main thing is there's a difference between a trans person who survived and been like in a world where they've already, like, you think you're new at scaring and being mean to trans people? Like, people literally have been beaten to death for thousands of years over this. Trust me, they're used to being told that they're like, this is where that comes from, the idea that you're against the world, right? And
if you're the kind of person that's going to pick on the people that are different anyways, then
Right.
they're almost there to absorb that.
That's why I love
you know,
trans people.
and
By
they're
the
like
way,
willing
I do.
to kind of man that line.
I love
and
trans
they
people
do
because
so.
all the trans people I know who've survived a lot of that stuff.
Sorry, it's a bad metaphor to say to man the line, but yeah.
But yeah, I like it. No, I mean, that's
From
the
an
thing.
antiquated era. Again,
Most
masculine,
of the trans
feminine.
people I know who survived crazy things, abuse, trauma, living in like a world that doesn't want them, etc. They're pretty cool people because they're a little bit tougher for that, not the other way around. It's interesting how we have this Hollywood internet thing where they're like, oh, trans people are these like weak people. No, none of the ones I've ever met actually are anything like the people that you see on the internet. And this is true about most things.
Yeah. And so, Andreas, you and I earlier, we were talking about the new, within the past month, you've had Flint Dibble are debating with Graham Hancock. You've had a couple of, on InfoWars, Harrison Smith brought on a flat earther and debated for like over an hour and a half. And so, but within this context, this week, Alex Stein, not to kick a dead horse, so to speak, or to not talk about the elephant in the room, but he had on Blair White and Abel Garcia. And Abel Garcia is someone who's detransitioned and felt like they were brainwashed.
Yeah, Scott bringing up this point as well. Like, why are there so many trans kids? Well, let me give my take on that. I think the reason is because we have these arbitrary ideas about what gender is, like freaking pants, for instance, that people are saying, hey, I don't like to wear pants. I don't want to be a football player. I don't want to be whatever the heck. I can't be. And this is a really big problem in conservative places. Trans movement.
But the reason I agree with you that's a problem.
Trans movement is the conclusion of right-wing conservatism, because you get to the point where you say, I'm willing to sacrifice the self in order to augment the self to fit into gender roles, rather than saying, I'm not very good at fitting into your masculine gender role, so I have to fit into your feminine gender role. Right? Like, you should just say,
and children smell bullshit from a mile away.
Right?
But we all agree that children generally, if they have good bullshit detectors, and if the adults are creating a set of arbitrary rules and divisions that are not only arbitrary and seemingly punitive in some way, but are also hurting people's feelings, the kids are very quick to kind of step back, and the very first time they're going to question the authority of their parents, of the people that are telling them how things are supposed to be, whether it be through the church or through school, or
there's definitely,
oh my God,
is in situations where there are unreasonable.
There's a huge benefit to like surgery companies, to insurance companies, to corporations, to pharmaceutical companies, to anybody who can make money off of people, consumers who need to buy a product to change who they are. So, of course,
Andres, you want to hear my actual scientific? Again, it's only 5 seconds.
The exploitation of children will be tied to the transgender movement, because children are in the process of adjusting themselves to become the people that they plan to be, and you can tell them there's a cheat,
and they're very impressionable.
You can just use their consumable product,
and we're impressionable. I would say we're impressionable up and through like age 30, even because of the type of neurological trauma that we receive upon entering this world through the birth canal instead of being born via cesarean section, pre-planned. I think that we are kind of reset, and thankfully, again, my neuro tissue has somewhat recovered from whatever it was I experienced when I was entering this world. But when you have people that have prolonged childhoods and maybe have certain developmental delays where certain things almost have savant-like skills, and it's not that they're asocial or antisocial, it's just that they choose to focus their efforts. And it's like, if I spend a lot of time alone with my computer doing something, I'm going to be more socially awkward if I do that for a whole week than if I don't, check in with family members, this, that, or the other.
But I think
the algorithms now are targeting children.
Yeah,
it could be classified as autistic if that's what we want to call it now, because we don't understand the brain damage that children.
You go to Africa, or you go to like the fourth world, you go to the places in the third and fourth world, and people laugh when you tell them about what's going on in the West. They're like, "What? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you think you can become?"
Well, will it be recorded in the history textbook?
They understand
it.
We
heard this about Rome. We heard when Rome fell. They understand the gender thing went.
They understand it though, that the West has witch doctors that can change you from the way you look to look differently, and they understand what we're talking about far closer than we do. But the difference is, you've got dudes wearing dresses, you've got chicks.
But those same systems can replace your heart.
They don't have the social,
like a pig's heart.
They don't have the social engenderment nonsense the same way that we do. They have a natural epigenetic consequence that's led to epigenetic responses that are sexualized, but these gender responses are not the same as saying women have to wear pants or women have to wear dresses or women have to be inside or women have to work barbecues.
That's where the algorithm gets its foot in the door. That's where the algorithm gets its foot in the door and then exposes a child to all types of content.
The issue is
you can use that same foot in the door to make them speak another language, and instead what's happening is it's opening up the kid's mind in a very impressionable age, and all the way again up to age 30,
conservative values,
where they are inclined to associate.
These values are not realistic values that have anything to do with nature. Whether or not you live in a New English house and you have like the family patriarchal system that's existed since the feudal times, those are not natural systems. Matriarchal linear systems have existed. Matrilinear systems in Africa and all over the world have been the normative, and you can see it.
But so if my algorithm in feed is full of God and Mormon and Christianity, all this, that could be controlled because people are putting money into YouTube and getting it to recommend content that has to do with religion or spirituality. But what if the fact that certain people's algorithms get filled with trans stuff, it could be about the algorithm trying to find clickbait. And it's not necessarily.
I think it's
still
natural.
Allowed for
the trans movement, which has nothing to do with trans people, like we just talked about. The trans movement is a natural consequence of conservative ideals that are impossible to live up to and have no logic in the next generation. For instance, feudalism, which has led to the father being the leader of a household, has been broken by corporatism. It doesn't exist anymore. And the idea of getting into a marriage based on that principle is there's no point to it, so people don't do it. So the idea of what a marriage is has to change entirely into the idea of what we're working together to build some sort of a personhood. But this is a literal person. It's a child as opposed to a corporation or a farm entity. Like all of these ideas are changing, right? We can't imagine a world where
saying that about the subject
if you're not a football player in Iowa, you have to be a cheerleader.
Why it's happening now is different than saying that at someone who considers themselves trans in some way or not.
But there's
saying it at someone.
If we didn't force kids in Iowa to become football players or cheerleaders, then we would have a lot less of a problem with this.
Yeah,
I think the bigger issue really is that it's a reaction. It's still, when people are saying it, they're like, "Why are you doing this?" Well, because this happened to me. Well, dude, then figure it out. Like, stop making this happen to these kids. We're living in a world that's actually perpetuating all these things, and they're looking for a solution. Well, maybe we find a better solution, but probably the better thing is to stop the problem in the first place, right? Okay. Which is to let these kids live the way that they want to live. Stop anticipating that they're not going to be perfect for the old world in the old paradigm and sending them off to these I'm sorry if this is like post-traumatic stress.
I had a friend who was growing up, and she had two older brothers, and she asked her parents when she got to a certain age when she was going to grow a wee-wee, because her understanding as a freaking 4 or 5 year old was that as you got older, she looked at the two older siblings she had, and apparently understood that they were both boys and had wee-wees, and that she didn't have one. And
Scott,
she just figured it was a matter of time.
I didn't mean Scott, I wasn't saying that at you. That wasn't clear. But also the idea of a conservative. I use these words obviously really differently. I think of a leftist who's trying to conserve their farm. Eco-conservatives exist, right? And so there's a lot of generality to it. The idea of what am I trying to conserve? Everyone's trying to conserve something. They're trying to conserve their values, their ethos, the experiences they had. They want to perpetuate the experiences they had on the next generation. But not everybody does. A lot of
where you really get the fear radar, the urgency in your voice. It's like when
phenomenological diversity.
Well, it's because the schools are apparently they're trying to define whether or not they're allowed to keep secrets from their parents, and then it's like this whole MK Ultra potentially causing
That's
a duel.
Point, Colt. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying if you're in Iowa and someone's saying you have to be to represent your family, you need to be the football player, right? But if you're saying I'm not going to be good at being the football player, and then your paradigm is, well, then I better be the cheerleader. That's crazy. Okay, that's a crazy paradigm. It's a crazy logic that's emerged. And it's kind of what people are doing. They're saying, if I can't be a man the way I have been told a man is,
too crazy guys, but it's something that you're
not
rejecting.
Real. You don't have to be. You don't have to be a man the way I tell you to be.
And you can be a crazy artist without going so far into there's crazy in the context of different circumstances.
Happy Saturday.
Hey. How are y'all? Do we have a theme song for Bernie? Can we make one up right now?
Oh, we could do something. Hold on. Hey, did you hear my woke song? Here, hold on.
Yeah. Oh no! Don't make a woke song tonight. Come on.
Yeah. I'm just doing
coming back in and back.
Yeah.
Very quick.
I'm a woke leftist communist. Pingo to the core, spreading
Yeah,
peace and love, but you can't ignore. Gonna reshape the world, make it all fair and square. No more private property, we're all gonna share. Call me PC, cause I'm politically correct. Using words like weapons, gotta show respect. Manipulate the language, control the narrative. Make you question everything, make you wanna live. We'll know nothing and be happy. That's
Chair dancing. Again, chair dancing competition. I think we could rock it. We could start it.
Control. World peace by force, share won't make it right. In the name of justice.
This type of fitness activity to do while you're stuck in traffic. Mobilize the hips, left and right.
Leveling the playing field. No more exploitation, that's the deal. From the streets to the ivory tower.
I feel like the left doesn't have a good enough propaganda team. We should hire us to do their stuff.
We frame the conversation, change the fight. Equality for all, no matter race or creed. That's the vision, that's what we need.
I mean, who could argue with that? You know what I mean?
Almost sounded like Talib Kweli there.
Yeah, right. Hey, look how flat it is. Sorry, I was trying not to do that, but
The Talib Kweli was an artist who released music with Mos Def, and one of my favorite lines of his is he goes, my name is in the middle of equality. Because Talib Kweli is his name. My name is.
Rad Dad of 4 disagrees with my take. I actually, you know what? I'm totally down to hear other people's takes. Would love to hear other people's takes. That's just a hot take. My take isn't the final take. So he's a hot take. Yeah, send me better takes, you know, than my take, and I'm open.
That's what I use this platform. You try ideas on for size. That's kind of it's like using your friends as a sounding board, and it's.
Hold on. You know what would be cool? Can we get Rad Dad of 4? Do you want to pop in the stream for a second? Like you can say your piece, your thought.
Say your piece.
I'll send you a link somehow if you want to do it. Say yes, and I'll send you a link somehow. We'll figure that out.
Sweet.
Or you can just comment whatever you want to do.
Canada without snow? Oh my! Woo! It's finally melted.
Blue skies.
Because this is a hot take that's already assuming you've thought about all the other takes that you've heard.
So
all the other takes I've heard are like there's chemicals in the water. There's like a hermetic inversion process. The poles are shifting. There's a lot. I'm open to this. I want to hear all your takes.
And it could be a epigenetic response to overpopulation. Anyway,
that's what with the islands, it's a major
or a cultural
thing.
manifestation and emergent.
Anthropologically, we do see that a lot when there's a hyperpopulation on a small island. Then homosexuality and third genders emerge, right? Like that's a thing. I don't know if you
got to be unique. Again, it's about being attractive to the type of person you want to spend time with or reproduce with, and those are not necessarily
third gender could be complicated, though, right?
Gender, so Bernie's remarking on the snow melting. Apparently, when I was little, I would look out at the window, and at the end of winter, I would like crying and go like, "Is it ever gonna grow back? It's all dead." And then as soon as it's growing back, I would just sit there at the window and be like, "Guys, it's happening again. The world isn't dead forever. Oh my god!" Because I didn't quite have the annual memory yet of the seasonal cycles, but and then. My parents made me grow vegetables in my closet. They would stick me in front of a light. But sorry, go ahead, Bernie.
In case I can't let everybody in, but if Rad Dad or somebody's got a thought on that, we're gonna try calling. You know, how about that? How about them apples? What are you saying, Bernie? What are you doing there?
Don't do what Bernie does. Don't call in while driving. But hey, it's a fun time.
Do it. Yeah, people do get upset. They're like, "Oh man, those call-in YouTubers," but I think you're doing okay because you're not running the stream. You know, you're just chilling. You're just trying to exist.
We did lose Aiden because he made the safer option.
Aiden was like, I don't know. Aiden will throw down. The only reason I do that is because Aiden throws down what is to me not a controversial take. It's like a tedious take. No offense to Aiden. I love Aiden, but that's I hear the same take. It's well, that's because the Chinese people don't have religion, so they don't believe in the value of their life. And that's not right. That's not.
I feel like when it comes to commenting on major international political issues too.
Drive and think that it's God, right? It's God's choice, not your own. So You know, you can do whatever you want, crash and die, and that was God's will, not your own stupidity, sort of thing. So
I agree. Like I have a lot of my friends are not like by quantity, but like in terms of people, I have at least 3 or 4 dozen friends that are Rhodesian. You know, that are kids that were born and had to leave Rhodesia as children. You know, I've met them all over the world. Like I love Rhodesian people, and I get their perspective on it, but a lot of them have like a shifted perspective. That's like, to be fair, Rhodesia is weird. It's a weird creation in the first place. And so to pretend like, you know, granted, they were doing better with it with all of the resources that made it possible, but it still was like at the detriment to the rest of Africa in a lot of respects. And functionally, Rhodesia existed because as a concept, it is to make a state system out of Africa. So you cannot have, I mean, the entire, really, like, there's no solution. Like the creation of Zimbabwe didn't save or stop Rhodesia in a lot of ways. We still have the same problem where Africa.
I just got something in my inbox that said Jason Momoa and Seth Meyers are at a party together and they want to join the stream. No, I'm just kidding. But again, as soon as we're bold enough to, it's like what you put out a link on the bottom to a StreamYard link, and you never know. You never know who's out there.
It's possible, man. I mean, it's a call-in show now, theoretically, de facto. I hope Aiden wasn't too upset though, because he probably was like, "Don't put me on the spot."
But people don't log YouTube on their phones, and they just pull it up in the browser. They can't even comment. No, remember, it's the silent generation, so it's.
I like calling it while driving.
Scott's got a point. Yeah, breeding is highly key. You're gonna have a bunch of crazy people die out and not have any interesting things happen if they don't breed. We, the people. So, at the very least, get some cloning going with transhumanism. Otherwise,
Speaking of cloning, was shit a clone between yourself and Yoga Pants, Yoga Poser? Come on, you guys, like, have you not seen the resemblance
between me and Aiden? You're saying?
You and Xirtus gave birth to Aiden by the looks of it. It's weird. It seems like you two.
Well, I already like putting out there that I'm just an AI puppet that Andreas created from scratch, and so maybe Aiden is a hybrid that he's created. Of
I actually want to respond. I think having kids is really important. I think family and kid progenitor, like alchemically speaking, even this, like, probably the meaning of life and everything about it has to do with the fact that you come from being born and you produce new births. I mean, it seems like they're obvious things. I think that's the thing though with the trans movement.
It's very ableist though, you know. It's just
it doesn't have to be what it's been, you know. There's a huge reaction to people that are upset about these extraneous things that have nothing to do with that. They have nothing to do with, you know, there's a lot of weird families out there with strange mothers and fathers that don't live up to, and everyone says my parents are weird, you know, and there's no reason they can't be weird.
And they don't understand that their father's gay and that their mother is.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's
the neighborhood
too. Like I don't know. Like I think there is that. Like there are.
I mean, there's a lot. In Boston. There's a lot of that. I think. Yeah.
I saw there's a guy on the Ward Radio show that they've had who's like an open homosexual, but he has married like I think a lesbian lady, and they have kids because that's the point of life, really. And now they're happy because it's not just about how they had like a sexual.
And people are going to be angry if they tell their kids about their sexuality. If they don't tell their kids about their sexuality.
I don't know if that's everybody's situation that's homosexual, if they can do that, but it seems to me that making your whole life all about your sexuality is probably a bad thing no matter what. Like Charlie Sheen.
I think it's called shallow almost. Right?
I don't think you should do that. Right? And like, probably you get bored or you get like hormonally less interested in that. And there's just some sort of a replay value to having kids. So I feel like
being an artist, like I remember someone commenting to another artist that they were in school with and saying, you know, your work just doesn't really interest me all that much. It's interesting what you're doing, but it's all about you being gay. And it's like, I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just
no truth.
That's the most interesting thing about you.
That kind of
but then artwork can be about expressing trauma or processing trauma or creating something that allows someone else to process their trauma. And as you were saying, coming from different situations, different types of things people are watching and experiencing in totally different ways.
Truthagon, what's that called though? There is a thing like Truthagon's bringing up. Do you mean like weird families that like the Freemasons and the Swift family, and they're doing things to their kids? I didn't mean that. But that is a thing, right? I'm trying to taboo families. And so, yeah, you have to be careful about that because the other thing is you've got people that look normal Like the taboo families are people that like have doctorates and they're nurses and they just work with kids all the time. And everyone's like, oh, they were the nicest guy. The scariest people dress, you know, like nicely in sheep's clothing and everything like that. And so, yeah, the taboo families.
I don't like thinking about that because then it's hard to
I would much rather be in some weird family than a taboo family. I'd like a family that's like, you know, the dad like cuts down trees and doesn't have a college degree, and the mom wears pants. I don't care. I don't know what you want. Like, then I'd rather do that than be in a taboo family where, you know, the dad is like a minister that everyone loves in the town, and like, you know, you have to be you can't say anything against him, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So wait, Bernie, is it true that you have a bun in the oven now, or you? I remember you saying at some point. No.
What?
You said. Okay,
No.
because other people on Andreas's streams it was Adam Krigler has a bun in the oven, I think.
Nice. Congrats. Not yet.
Not
sure the closet heterosexual.
You're still free to go. Because you said you're going to go camp out at the Guardian.
Oh yeah, we're doing that this summer. I'm actually coming up with the plans tomorrow when I interview Wandering Wolf. Hopefully,
if that's something you get to sign up for and like buy a ticket for. I don't know. I don't put too many things on the calendar, but you know, if I should have a little yoga studio open by that time, but I'll cancel classes for that weekend if just to.
Oh yeah! All right, let's do it. I'm aiming for the last week of August or maybe first week of September.
Interesting.
I guess it'll have to be last week of August because yoga classes will start first week of September, right? So
it's true. If it's at exactly the wrong time, it'll be hard to peel myself away. But then I don't know. The last time I opened studio, it was like a year and a half, and finally there was a friend's wedding, actually up in Canada, up in Toronto, and I took a weekend off and went up there.
Beautiful Canada.
Maybe I haven't gotten. I want to hear like people's like alternative to. I'd love to learn that I was missing something. Someone explain to me more about what I'm missing here. But I feel like that's part of it is that if we opened up the qualia of what it is to be a man and a woman and made it just be like, yeah, you know, you were born and you have children, like, and it was just that, it might help a lot because the idea of these engendered social roles having anything to do with gender probably it doesn't really make sense. And like you go to Africa, you see women like working all the time.
Well, so Andreas, if you'll allow me, will you allow me to? Because Devil's Advocate is
pioneer women
is my favorite,
hardest working people you ever meet. Like, so clearly, gender roles aren't about what we're like afraid of.
So without even looking at the chat, if there's like a rage monster, if I can be their anger translator, or again, just to bring in again, not that I'm trying to counter you on the ideas you're putting forward, just to kind of add to the conversation. Like, so
somebody,
the idea is like imagine you're 14 and you step on a landmine. And you lose your reproductive capability, as far as you know. Maybe there's a surgery that can fix it. But so now what they're hearing someone say, who's someone that they look up to, they like your art, and then all of a sudden you're presenting a paradigm in this black and white way where instead of it, because what they're hearing you say is that the purpose of life is reproducing, and that their life is now purposeless because they can't. It's like a woman who finds out she's
biologically reproduce, though. I think that you can meme, but there's danger to that, and you should like know that if that's what you're called to do instead of something else, you know, that's a thing. Like obviously millions and millions of people learning from you, like a nun who doesn't have her own children might teach hundreds or thousands of children. There's a lot of ways.
Well, and so again, my understanding, you may have the specific times and upheavals but in order to get their children across the borders, they would kill all the male children, and that was just what they heard. And so the mother made a snap decision before she left the house with a fucking X-Acto knife, okay? Mm-hmm. And all the kids are alive, and yeah, maybe a couple of them are a little confused at the moment, and they don't really know whether to hate their mother for what she did and whether or not it was true they were going to kill them if they were all male children. But all they know is that they're like in America now or somewhere else, and they've relocated, and they're just trying to find content that doesn't somehow. And again, it's like every time it's dragged into the topic of conversation, it should be handled with a certain amount of.
It sucks because there's actually a legitimate group of people, about 5,000 people that are born a day, which is a lot realistically, that are born that are intersect with both parts. They're hermaphrodites, and they're completely they're exploited and they are ignored because of the trans movement that exists now, which is saying, but you have to imagine all these kids have been told as their entire lives, their parents, when they were babies, they didn't know what to do. This is the first time they've ever heard of this. And it's the last time because they're going to be never tell anybody again. They often don't tell their children.
And it's interesting. There's almost a fine line because imagine the beauty of these online communities is they joke is like the weirdos can find each other, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. And I'm a self-professed weirdo. Again, it's like I'm a nerd. Again, I embrace my inner nerd.
Yeah, that's three weirdos on each other on the internet.
But for some people, the algorithm that allows them access to content where there's people of all everywhere in between on the spectrum, other than male or female, are making content and having conversations even just about what the weather is without there being this life or death or sense of judgment or confrontation, then they may view that as like a portal to exactly what they're looking for. And that very same portal, someone else who feels like they're on the periphery of that or has questioned it in the past or in their childhood did and then reverted back, when they see that content, they see it as grooming and they see it as an avenue that is there. And again, it does have that function on people who are either developmentally delayed and or just still in an age or a phase of their life even where they're just very impressionable, let alone in circumstances where there might be monetary incentives or somehow other situational demands that would encourage them to have certain surgical procedures or embody certain types of energy within a community, I guess. But I don't know. I've got the full screen here, so I think I'm supposed to keep talking. But
I like it. That's
yeah.
nice. Yeah. Here, we'll go to Bernie's window for a second. Well, we are at like 2 hours deep anyway. I don't know if there's anything else to even. What else is there? What else? What even is there? The
Celtics game isn't over yet. If that's what you're asking.
Chicken dinner.
Winner.
For the dog.
I'm taking a dog for a walk, so thanks for letting me on the end of your stream. Much love, guys. And
hey, anybody watching the stream who have opinions about things, we sent a link, but you could also go to tartarnova.com, join the Discord, join up, send a message. You can send it privately. You don't have to be publicly lauded for having thoughts and independent ideas. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. And it's funny, this is 322. There's definitely like 1,000 now. But go to the Discord entry. From there, you can reach out directly or like Instagram, whatever, or watch this documentary on intersex people. I don't know what you want to do. Just do whatever you want. But like, if you reach out, we'll be happy to listen to you. I will be.
Yeah, Andreas manages his channel in his own way, and again, if you wanted to just be able to get your message out there, I'm sure we won't. There's not going to be people that cut you off and disagree with you. They'll let you get your points out there.
There's got to be a middle ground. There's got to be a way to love everybody.
Open Discord. That is the middle ground. Exactly what you're doing and encouraging.
Yeah, I definitely hear both sides. Like, I'm not saying I want everyone to be one or the other, but like, I definitely want to hear out and understand how people can live in this world, because I just don't see how it could be designed to entrap you into being the sinner for being who you are necessarily. That's not the way that works, but that you can still, whatever the circumstances, you can do something good. You can do something that benefits others, right? Whether it's be your children or other people's children or just the world in general. I think that's important.
And as far as this being Andreas's channel and of having and Bernie as well, a lot of time in the game, as far as representing kind of a center of the road and giving a platform to different ideas and people, whether they be things on the periphery of certain physics, science, or perpetual motion, or monatomic gold, this, that, or the other, this willingness to at least entertain hearing someone through in their argument. But when it comes to, I'm coming at it from a perspective instead of like, what opinions am I willing to tolerate in the peers around me? But the peers around me aren't people that are educating children, and they're not people that are producing content and funneling it to children and or giving advice to children who are in the position where they're asking an adult for advice about something. And there's a big difference in between passing around ideas and talking kind of about the topic and about the scientific, or the medical differences versus coming up with something to say that's cohesive, that presents a concise narrative to people that are impressionable, that might be watching and or otherwise. Yeah. So that's just
so stupendous. In every way, he's just tremendous. With a smile that's contagious and a heart so vivacious. Andreas Xirtus, oh, he's audacious.
The audacious Andreas Xirtus.
Dance with the trees, bringing laughter and cheer wherever.
It's such an underused word. Who else? No one's claimed audacious Andreas, and there's the alliteration. I mean, I'm feeling it, dude.
I love it. You're audacious.